Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hanson, joined by Jeff Cork at the end of the table.
Why, hello, all the way over there.
So handsome. And then we got Andrew Reiner.
Hello, sir.
And Ben Reeves.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Better now.
You know what this is?
Calm before the storm.
How do you feel, Reiner? This is what E3 for you?
I've been to every one, so how
Really?
many are there? 15? 16?
I want
I
to say
think more than that.
over 20.
20? 21? I
This
don't
is
know.
21, I want to say.
Are you
Yeah,
still
I've been to every one.
I think
Are you still
E3 can
exci-
drink.
That's true. Are you still excited about this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like these last few days, we've just had leaks, leak after leak after leak.
Yeah.
People taking pictures of posters, trailers hitting early. It's so exciting because it's like all these big games hitting, these publishers, putting their big bucks behind these big AAA releases and usually wait to see them at the show during the press conferences. But it's kind of cool to start seeing some of it a little early. And then obviously we'll see a lot more when we get to the show. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff, I know you, like me, you go home, play games every day. And so we're seeing kind of our roadmap. So, yeah, how can you not be excited about that?
It's determining the rest of your lives.
Exactly.
really.
basically
Yeah,
it.
the next year, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We're going to get into a bunch of E3 stuff coming up in a little bit on the show, talking about predictions, what we want from the show, what might be there, what is going to be there. But before that, we're going to be talking about the new Mirror's Edge game.
Whoa,
That Ben Reeves recently
surprise.
reviewed. Talked a little bit about Dangerous Gulf. We're going to talk about Edge of Nowhere, which is Insomniac, officially known as the Spyro the Dragon developer and the composer of the song Crazy Ride.
Let's
the new
just say this
Amplitude.
game might make you an insomniac.
Ooh.
We
And
can
then
edit that out.
Scary.
we're getting to E3 predictions after that, and then following that up, we are concluding the GI Game Club for Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, which Jeff Cork
Yeah.
is going to join us on.
It's true.
He's jumping in halfway, and as he jumped on, a bunch of other people jumped off that sinking ship.
Exactly.
So we lost some, but we gained
Like
some.
pigpen style stink lines where they were like, PU, no thanks.
Perfect. So we talk all about the second half of Uncharted 4 in the Game Club, and it's a good chat. So stay tuned for that if you want to either be spoiled or to hear about something that you've already played. We're also going to throw some emails in there from listeners and viewers and stuff like that. But to kick things off, biggest game that came out this week, probably Mirror's Edge Catalyst.
Probably. They should have called it Edge of Nowhere because that's how I felt I was going when I played it. How's
And you're a
that
writer?
for- I don't know.
It's a first draft. Everything that comes out of our mouths.
You
just
really got to
remember.
rethink
That's what editors
things.
are for,
That's
right?
right.
Okay, so Mirror's Edge, it's the whole parkour thing. 2007, 2008. When did that first
It
one
was a
come
long
out?
time ago. It was one of like the early games I remember seeing when I first started here, actually. So
1982, and so
that's right.
that was from DICE, the Battlefield developers, and it was a crazy passion project for them, and they've been trying to get the sequel off the ground for so many years. They finally did it. They got EA to finance this whole thing. It's being pushed through the system, and then it goes into Ben Reeves' system, and he plays it, and he
comes
thinks,
right out. Well, I'll start by saying that I was a big fan of the first one, actually. So I was like excited, and early previews of this game had us a little wary, but I think I was still pretty hopeful, and it just like wasn't even like okay. It was kind of like not good in some areas, I'm a writer, all right? Like the combat especially is particularly frustrating, and instead of like being able to actually use a gun in this one like you could in the first one, that's not even an option.
it seems like some people were on board for that because the gunplay was like the biggest complaint.
I
from
actually
Mirror's Edge
was on
1.
board for that. The problem is like combat, they didn't do a whole lot to restructure it. You can build up a shield so guys have trouble hitting you while you're running. The faster you run, the harder you are to hit.
Because you build up a shield when you run?
It's like conceptual shield. I actually kind of like that in theory, right?
I don't know why they called it a shield, and it should have just been harder to hit, like you're the Flash or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they should have like found a better word, but you know,
It's just like a Bastion style conceptual shield.
we all know that writing's hard. Okay.
Writing?
No, it's a bar on the bottom of your
Okay.
like screen. That anyway.
Yeah.
That's not the biggest thing here.
I'm more confused about this game than before we started this podcast.
Well, okay. So the basic premise is like you're parkouring over the city. You're first person, and so you can run and jump off stuff and shimmy up ledges and
Kind of like Peter parkour.
Did you play the first one?
Love the first
Yeah,
one.
You're describing the first game.
Yeah.
So
the
the
big
new
change
game,
is like it's in an open world now.
Right.
And so you're going around the city like doing missions, and part of what's frustrating about that is you kind of go across the same areas of the city over and over again, so it's fairly repetitive. and boring because you're like running up and down the same like things over and over again. And then the combat, like I said, is frustrating because you have limited melee attacks and like guys just destroy you.
I have a
in
question
hits.
for you.
Yeah.
Did you play Dying Light?
Yes.
Did you like Dying Light?
So actually, I didn't think about it while I was reviewing it, but like Dying Light is way better than Mirror's Edge.
Because Dying Light does the thing where, like, when you first start off, you are not great at parkour. You're basically like some idiot like me. But you get way better. Then you're like jumping over stuff, and after a while, you're looking at everything as like a puzzle, like you did in the first Mirror's Edge game.
Yep.
And it's a really fun, satisfying feeling. Do you have that at the beginning
The
of Mirror's
open
Edge?
world
Do you
there is-
unlock things?
The open world there is like easier to explore, I would say.
Yeah.
Because Mirror's Edge takes place all in the rooftops. So there's like, you're on a building, but there's only like 3 ways off that building. So you're constantly going those
So you're
3
never
ways.
street level?
You're never street level.
Okay.
Can you
And
look down? What's going on down there?
There's a bunch of cars. And
Fog,
if you fall,
cars.
Okay.
yeah, you
People
die.
with their heads out the windows looking up.
It's like the Spider-Man 1 game on PS2 or something.
Okay.
But to answer your original question, Cork, you do upgrade a little bit. I wouldn't say it's to the level of Dying Light.
Okay.
But you earn like a grappling hook is one of the things you earn
Oh,
throughout
that
the
sounds
game,
great.
which is actually kind of cool. And then you earn like Disruptor, which can disrupt giant fans, so you can see through fans, which is cool. And that works on enemies as well. And that's kind of the limited tech you get. And then you earn like a few things you can do that you could do in the first game, like tuck your legs up
Okay.
while you're jumping to like just sort of nudge over ledges. If that makes
When
sense.
did you learn to tuck your legs up when you jumped?
3?
3. Yeah, that's heavy. So is it just the open world that becomes a bummer over time? Like if this was
Open world
linear
and
with this.
combat are both a bummer. I mean, Reiner's
the
been
mission
playing it.
designs too. You know, you get into that world, and one of the unsung heroes of this, or stars of this generation, is Frostbite 3. In my opinion, like that is such a beautiful engine, and the things that these developers have done, DICE especially. The City of Glass is just stunning.
That's the name of the city here?
Yeah, you're in this thing, and it's pristine, it's sterile, it's white, it's sci-fi, and it almost looks like, you know, you're in an art gallery sometimes with the colors, the way they sync up the greens and blues and all
I
that.
want to see more of this game, yeah.
But as you're running across it, it's like, okay, hold to jump over this ledge. Okay, scurry up the wall, and it's all kind of clockwork. Like it's almost like you're in a rhythm where it's like, oh, this isn't that challenging. And then the challenges themselves are just kind of like, the side missions are like couriers. Like, hey, take this from point A to point B. Hey, go over here, do this from point A to point B. Point A to point B. Point A to point B. Only the story missions I thought were kind of interesting, where they kind of turn off. There's like a guidance system. You know, the other games in the series, they had the red coloring. When you'd run up to like a drain pipe, you'd turn red and you'd scurry up it, and you'd follow the color red. Like it was like a trail that you went in front of. And then this game, they have, on top of those red things, they have like I don't know, this line that appears in the environment, this kind of
It's like a
squiggle
ribbon
that's
floating through the
there.
environment.
And you're like, okay, I'm following that, and everything's still turning red. So I'm following red on top of red. And then on top of that, they have a person every once in a while that shows you exactly what to do. So it's like, okay, I'm following the red, and then the red trail, and then the red
this
person.
isn't just like tutorial stuff?
No.
Because that really feels like a tutorial
It
style.
feels tutorial.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like, please don't get lost in the city. But that's the whole point of the open world, is to find your own path. So in some missions, they turn that off, where you can't use this runner's vision or whatever they call it. And that's where it feels like the first game, where it is very puzzle-like you're saying in
Okay.
Dying Light, where it's like, okay, how am I going to get over to that pipe, that yellow pipe I got to swing across? Like, that stuff's cool, but it's so, like, I would say that's like 2% of the game.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, like the open world, if you do want to kind of grind through these events, it's a slog. You know, the races, it reminds me of like the rings in like a superhero game, like flying through the rings. Like, I just don't want to do that stuff, right?
That's the thing, like that kind of open world mission structure. If you break down your own life to its most essential elements, it's all a series of going from point A to point B. But hopefully interesting stuff is happening when you get to point B. So
Yeah.
you need to have that. And it doesn't seem like that's part of
No,
that.
and
It's just a
they'll
matter
have, sometimes they'll have combat encounters where there'll be like 3 guys that come out of a doorway. And it's like, okay, I can't use guns anymore, so this is going to be the kind of the pacifist thing. They're really kind of sculpting faith that way. Well, then I'll kick a guy in the head, and he'll be like, whoa, whoa, and he just keeps going, whoa, whoa, and he falls off a ledge and he dies. And I'm like, well, I'm a murderer, because the AI is just terrible at times. Like, you could circle guys, and they're just like, huh? Where is she? Like, endlessly circle someone.
It seems like this is the type of game that if you saw someone who's really good at it or really practiced, it could look awesome.
Oh,
like
yeah,
if you look at
definitely.
highlights clip, this is probably going to look amazing, but it's just a matter of it's a grind to go through the base game.
Yeah, it's a grind, and like I wouldn't say there's like a little bit of progression, like with the grappling hook and whatnot. I would say, but there's not enough of that really to feel like you're doing that. Like at the end of the game, you're still kind of doing the same stuff you were at the beginning of the game, so it doesn't feel that much evolved.
And at the end of the game, without spoiling things, does it sync up with the beginning of the next game? Or is it completely a reboot?
Well, so yeah, it is. They've said that it's pretty much a reboot.
Okay.
And there are things like in the first game, Faith's sister gets like accused of murder.
Hope.
Yeah, no, her sister's Kate.
Is there actually a hope in this game?
No.
Okay, that was just a random guess.
Threw me
Okay.
for a second.
Probably is.
And then in this game, they've changed that, so she still has a sister, but it's different, like how they do it.
So it's like-
and it's kind of spoilery. I don't want to go into it, but
Okay.
like, so there's things like that they kind of go off of what was in the first game, but change it a bit.
Do you feel like the hardcore of the hardcore Mirror's Edge fans, because they are out there? I think Kyle Hilliard's one of those freakazoids. Will they find something to really enjoy here? It's like, oh, even if the open world structure isn't great, I still have that satisfying Mirror's edginess, and it's worth playing for them.
I thought about that because I consider myself one of those like hardcore Mirror's Edge fans, and I was like, the whole time I was reviewing it, I'm like, if I wasn't reviewing this, would I want to keep playing? And I don't think I would have seen it all the way through to the end if I wasn't reviewing it.
God,
you know what I mean?
so sad.
It's so
I guess
disappointing.
I'm on the other side of that where it's like I'm getting bored doing this open world stuff, pulling the chips out of the boxes. It's just like, this is tedious. And then I'd get that one mission where I was like, oh, that was really cool. I want to see what the next one is. But then it's just like kind of that slog to get to the
Yeah.
next one.
Do you think you're going to stick with it?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I want to. I mean, but I'm a rare case though. I usually finish anything I start. That's just
Sure.
I can't just put it down.
Yeah, if
'Cause
you're
it'll
not-
bug me till the end of
If
time.
you're not
like-
Reiner and you don't play like every game ever, like I think there's other games out there that are more worth your time.
Like the Mirror's Edge iOS game, which
Yeah,
is like a
like, well-
Cannibalt clone, but was actually pretty fun.
Or even like Uncharted or something, or Tomb Raider, games that take platforming in a different direction. There's nothing quite like Mirror's Edge that's
Yeah.
first person platforming is the kind of a shame.
Dying Light.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
Dying Light.
actually just
Go for
Lights
Dying
maybe.
Light
Just
instead.
go there.
But the gameplay's tighter. It's more forgiving, so you do feel like you're just in that flow a little bit more.
All right.
Going through the city. So, man, it's just disappointing that it's just put to such. The open world hurts it. I think that does. Like, I don't think they were able to sculpt cool lines through the city. Like you see that a lot in open world games like Grand Theft Auto or something where they try to do like just put in these random races into that open world, and it's not as entertaining, or they're not planning like, okay, we're gonna have a turn here, because they already are working with the world itself, as opposed to just a standalone racing map where they can design it however they want. Right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
I know that everyone's losing their mind over Battlefield 1, and I was really into that trailer too, and I'm excited for that game, but how do you think DICE's stock is doing in general? I feel like before it was like, if DICE is working on something, super big thumbs up, and then it started with server issues, and then Battlefront was disappointing. How are they doing? When you learn that DICE is on a project, I feel like they've lost like they're a little bit in the platinum realm now, where it's like, well, we'll see.
It's going to sound great.
Yeah, and
Absolutely, yeah.
the technical expertise is still there for sure. Like Battlefront is beautiful, Mirror's Edge is beautiful. The mechanics in both games are spot on. It's just you got to do interesting things with them. A multiplayer only Battlefront game. Everybody wanted a Star Wars story, right? It's a fun game, but there's not enough content there to really kind of hold your interest. And
I
then
kind of
this
wonder.
one,
Yeah, they bit off more than they could chew. Or there are too many projects kind of going at once.
And they
was
have the
problem.
LA studio now, and so I wonder how that's being divided up. I think fans would want just like a clear cut of like, oh, well, the Sweden office, they're amazing, and then the LA one is garbage. But I don't think that's necessarily how it shakes out.
know
It's
if
just,
that's how it
but
is
clearly
either.
they are tackling a lot.
Real quick, it's super weird that in the second game of a series, it's a reboot. Or am I just completely insane?
I
That
don't
just
know why
strikes
they
me
did
as
that
odd.
either, yeah.
like a super strange creative decision, because the whole reason that this game was made is this passion project from the developer, and then the fan base is super rabid about these characters, and then it's just like, oh no. Like, we had a kernel of a good idea, we're going to take it in a new direction. It just seems like a really strange thing to do, because obviously they have enough confidence in Mirror's Edge
Right.
that they're using the name. They're not starting completely from scratch or
Yeah.
telling a different character's story, but
I felt that way about the open world thing too. It's like, well, your formula worked pretty well actually with the first one. Why are you adding this new thing on top of it that kind of changes the way the game plays?
especially in an open world, like, if your missions are really just going here and here and you're getting a line telling you where to go, the advantage of an open world is that you can explore and take alternate paths, but if there's really no benefit to doing that.
There's
So
not
why-
that much there's not that many paths to explore in the open world is one, and then it's also kind of confusing because you might start going a way you think you're going. If you don't have that line turned on, you can get totally lost, and it would take you like twice as long to get where you need to go.
In some of these courier missions, it's like get from point A to point B in 30 seconds.
Oh, good.
And so it's like it's more of a test of being flawless than finding a path, a legitimate path there. So it's more of like, here is the path we put in front of you.
So it's like the missions in Dying Light that I hated.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
But the entire game. Is it just story mode? Is there multiplayer? Are there time trials or anything?
There's
anything
time
funky?
trials. Yeah, there's
Okay.
a bunch of like side missions in the city itself.
All right.
And you can create your own sort of time trial missions or checkpoint runs that you can. I don't even think you have to share them with your friends. They just sort of appear in other people's games.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's kind of like an asynchronous multiplayer component to it, but you're never actually playing with anybody else.
Okay.
You're just kind of racing against their own time trials.
Right,
like
right.
their
Okay.
ghosts.
Feels a lot like Need for Speed or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. What'd you end up giving this thing?
I gave it a 6.5.
God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
well,
fans out there.
I was like the whole. Yeah, we don't need to go into it, but yeah, I was definitely hoping it would be a lot better, and even early on, it seemed pretty positive. But the further into the game you get, like the more that sort of open world begins to wear on you.
You started to lose faith.
Yeah, I've lost faith.
How many review headlines were Faith No More? We should look that up.
We should really
Ben's
But it's
thinking
not
about
zero.
changing
Reach
it
out.
right now.
What did
out
you
and
use
touch
for
me.
your headline?
A hop, skip, and a sophomore slump.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. That's a fun little thing. Hey, you are a good writer.
Hey,
Metal
all
Dude.
right, I did
think
it in
you
the
did
end. All right, I did it.
Hey, real quick, Kato isn't down here, but we talked about it a bit on the last episode. Dangerous Golf came out, speaking of Need for Speed, from some former Criterion developers and whatnot. And he gave it an 8. It seemed like he enjoyed it a fair amount. You've been playing a little bit, Reiner?
Yeah, it's some of the Criterion guys, Alex Ward and a couple others formed I can't remember the name of it.
Three Fields
Entertainment, and they took that whole concept of Burnout, the Burnout series, in particular the crash mode, moved that over to golf and went, what would happen if we put that concept of blowing stuff up in golf? It sounds super weird, but it works very well.
And then the golf is all inside of a mansion or some sort of weird
So
place.
you're golfing in interiors, like convenience stores that are packed with foods and cans and all that stuff. Like you said, there's gas stations that you go to where you get to blow up the pumps and all that.
What's better than blowing a pump?
And so you tee off, you hit the ball at whatever you want. There's a lot of destruction, stuff falling off shelves, all that stuff. Awesome physics, new gen technology, looks great. And then your ball turns into like a molten sun, and it gives you this smash breaker, just like Burnout, where you had I think it was the crash breaker or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you hit the button and it explodes and stuff goes flying, and then you get to manually control it in slow motion, just like the burning wreckage of a car, and rack up as much damage as you can, getting points as you go, money as you go. And then, but here's the big twist on this one is you want to end in a way where your ball lands on the ground, the flames go out, and then you want to putt it. So you want to put it in a position where you can make it into the hole.
But the putting, from what I played, it just felt pretty automatic. As long as there's
if
nothing
you
blocking
line
your
it
shot.
up, or you line it up, or if you're around a corner, you want to ricochet it.
Okay.
And then you have two things. You have like just the regular hit, which goes like 200 miles an hour.
Right.
It's like seriously fired from a gun. And then the other one, which is just kind of a soft feather touch. And then later in the game, you get like an actual gun that you can fire the.
Really?
Yeah, you can fire the ball from.
Oh my god.
The putting feels like bumper bowling.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you really have to work it not to sink that putt.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and basically it's all dependent more on your shot before it and making sure it's in a position where it's just like a straight line basically.
That doesn't
In
sound
the same room,
That doesn't sound too
generally.
bad to me. As a guy who doesn't like golf or golf games really, this is something worth playing for people like me.
Yeah, I call it a good like a good palate cleanser, like between big releases, or you go through a couple missions in Mirror's Edge, and you're like, oh, I want to try something else. Go play this game for like a half hour.
So
Could
play
somebody
Mirror's
relate
Edge
to this
before you
point?
play this is what you're recommending.
So
Yeah.
that, you can just purge it out of your system with a flaming golf ball.
But the one thing I'll say is it's a game that's really dependent on like Tony Hawk of quick restarts. Like your first
Right.
ball isn't great, and you're like, I want to restart. it's like 30 to 40 seconds with each restart on this. So you're just kind of sitting there like, like that needed to be faster. That tech needed to be improved to really get that going.
Because the physics tech is super impressive. I'm not sure what they have going on behind the scenes there, but it looks good. There's a lot of fun, crazy stuff that you can knock off these shelves and make explode.
And as the game goes on, you get holes that you get to that have, there will be 3 holes, with 3 flags, and then you get to tee off 3 times. So it gets a little longer, a little bit more challenging. The score you need to hit is a lot higher.
I was expecting more of like, I don't know, a Peggle-like addiction to it, but I played it for maybe half an hour and I was like, I think I'm good here. That's about what I expected. I kind of petered
that's
off.
kind of how I felt the first night, but then once I got into the more complex stuff, I really kind of latched onto it more.
Oh, cool.
I think it was the same with Kato as well.
Okay.
With his reviews, like, it's pretty cool, and the next day he's like, it's pretty good.
You got to play some Mirror's Edge first, Hanson.
Oh, that's the secret. Yeah. It's a fine wine pairing.
Knocked out, punched in the face a few times. And
Hey,
then
speaking of getting punched in the face, Jeff Cork and Reiner, you guys look like you got punched in the face because you had the VR red marks all over your dumb faces. Anyways, you played Edge of Nowhere on the Oculus Rift.
Cut to the chase.
Yeah, look at that transition.
It's true.
What'd you think of this thing? I feel like you were going in a little bit skeptical, Cork.
That's because I had to put my face in a freaking Rift mask. I know I was going to have a big ring around my face, and some a-hole was going to make fun of me afterwards. So, mission accomplished.
But in the end, it felt like you were impressed.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. Yeah, it's. I think it's another one of those like VR experiences that, to its like credit, is something that is only probably really good in VR, and it's really good in VR. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's like the sense of immersion and like the presence that you get and everything is like part and parcel with the experience. Like I think that if you were to surgically extract the game itself and say this is a third-person survival horror game, you'd be like, okay, it doesn't have a whole lot going on. It's pretty good. There's some interesting moments, and the environments are kind of neat and everything. But, whatever. But I think like the VR puts it over that edge. Kind of like if you were to go, well, take the music out of Rez. How you like that game? You know what I mean? It's just such a fundamental part of that experience,
right?
And it works really well. Yeah,
it's the same creative director, Brian Algeier, who's been there forever. He did Fuse, but he also did almost all of the Ratchet and Clanks.
Yeah.
He's been
really?
at Insomniac, forever, and so
Even the
pretty
recent
high
one?
development pedigree. He started that one. I think it might have been a co-directed game, but I know he started development on that for sure. So what is it about the VR? Is it just being in Antarctica because it's kind of this weird Lovecraftian horror, or is it like
basically like the gist of it is you're Victor Howard and you're kind of following the trail of an expedition that your beloved Ava Thorne is on, and it went missing. So he was like, I'm going to get on this plane and figure out what's going on. And obviously terrible things happened. And like you said, it's like Lovecraftian horror. So there's, slumbering gods and all that kind of horrible stuff. And yeah, so there's like a fair amount of just seeing really gross stuff. And they have like moments where I got to back up a little bit because camera control is, I think, pretty interesting. It's like a third-person game, right? But the camera is fixed and it moves. So when you move your head, you're kind of like getting a look around the environment a little better. And you're also controlling where his headlamp is, you know what I mean? So you can kind of illuminate the ceiling and go, oh, that dripping thing is attached to his really scary mouth, so I should probably chuck a rock up there and knock it down and then
naturally
smash it.
That's how you aim as well.
Exactly. And it works really well. You think
just hold down left trigger and then...
Oh, interesting.
Your head is a really good gun sight.
Yeah.
Which is probably not the best way to look at it.
It's interesting. You sound pretty effusive. You sound pretty effusive about the game. But you give it like what, a 7.5?
Give it a 7.5, yeah.
So what is it that's not?
Ultimately, it has some issues I think that are impossible to overlook. Like I think that, I think the stealth is very frustrating at times. Because it's a survival horror style game. So you have an ice axe that can take out some of the smaller enemies in one hit, but there's some really big brute guys that, if you're lucky, you can sneak up on them and hit them. But otherwise, you'll have to take a couple of hits and you'll also soak up damage and everything. And their pathing is dependent on like sound. That's what they're alerted to. So you throw rocks around to get their attention. Rocks are in extremely short supply, and it's difficult to kind of tell when you are being detected sometimes and when you're not. And sometimes it feels like, wow, I just stomped right through these guys and they did not seem to care. And there are other times where you're just like, I did everything right and it doesn't make any sense why this failed. So it's a little inconsistent and frustrating.
Wait, I'm tempted to play this game because it's relatively short. You're saying what?
It's about 3 hours.
Okay,
or so.
that'd be fun just to stay late at work and check it out.
Oh, absolutely.
And everyone that has Oculus Rift at home, just check it out for a little bit.
Everyone at their office, yeah.
But I want to play it if with the VR and stuff it just gets trippy and bizarre. How trippy is it versus how scary is it?
It's definitely more trippy than scary.
Yeah.
Good.
You'll
Yeah.
see things and then you'll look back and it won't be there anymore.
Love it.
It'll
That's
be
kinda cool.
What was
A lot
that?
of like morphing environment type things and like transitioning from Antarctica to other places as you lose your mind.
more Twilight Zone than traditional horror.
So there's
You know,
not going to
like-
be like goblins jumping in my dumb VR
There are a
face.
couple
There
of,
are,
yeah,
yeah.
there are a
There's
couple of jump scares.
Okay.
And there's also some really cool moments where it's kind of like you come upon a scene and you press a button to interact with it, and then it's just basically kind of freezes it, and your character's talking. You can kind of look around and like, here's this dissected corpse, and you can get a really good look at it, and it's super yucky looking and
Oh,
stuff.
great.
Ugh, gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what are we talking about? For VR, it seems like this is up there. We have Adrift, which is also available in
Chronos.
2D, and Chronos. Are those like the big three, you think, premier VR games at this point?
Yeah,
I'm trying to
I think so.
So, spend thousands of dollars and check it out, everybody.
The cool thing about Edge of Nowhere is the thing that I really got latched onto. Like I thought the gameplay itself was kind of boring too. Just there's a lot of ice climbing, like tink 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 tink, and it's pretty slow and uneventful. And when there is challenge, when it starts cracking, it's like I have like 7 seconds to get off this. Like, no problem, right? But the whole mystery of it, like what is happening, like what's going on down there, I think they do a really good job of kind of drip feeding that to you.
All right on.
And then making like pretty big kind of shocking moments as you're playing. And like Jeff was saying, the presence and scale and immersion factor is really played up in this game.
Yeah.
And not just in like the mountains you're in, like looking up and being like, holy crap, I got to go up that. That's huge. But with the beasts and the horrors that you confront are pretty crazy.
There's one, I don't know if I'd say like it's a boss fight necessarily, but you have an encounter with an enemy that is huge, and it's a really cool moment. It's like looking for you, and you're among like other types of enemy creatures, and it's feeding, and it's like sending out like
cool.
sonar beams, and like other enemies will get in its path, and then it like sends out a tentacle that'll go right by you.
Yeah, I'll be like,
But
Yeah.
if I had a camera on your face, just Iron Man style, the camera inside the mask,
Please.
did it ever change expression? Was there ever a moment where you actually was like, ooh?
Yeah, I think like
All right.
when you're looking over the edge of stuff, it's a really like a lot of cool sensations. And there's like one jump scare, like because the game doesn't do a lot of them. And when it happened, I was kind of like, all right, that's my reaction.
Polite nod. All right.
All right.
I mean, if you've played Uncharted, when the terrain is falling underneath you, we're kind of desensitized to that now, right? Like stuff exploding. But in VR, it does take on a little bit different meaning, and
Okay.
it feels a little different. You're like, whoa, this is crazy. This is happening because you see more of what's below you in these instances.
Yeah, and as
it's
you're
not
like-
just behind a character.
Even in
right?
third person, it still
Yeah.
is pretty
Yeah,
effective.
yeah.
Yeah, because the camera moves around. It's very dynamic, even though the path is being followed like by kind of like a big dolly shot.
Yeah, yeah.
But like you might be going down an ice wall, and then the camera will shift, and you're looking down, and you see like this insane drop, and it's very effective.
Yeah, it
Oh,
hits
nice.
ya.
Cool. Hey, we should talk about E3.
Okay.
I hear it's dead, guys.
I've been hearing that for years. E3 is next week. As Reiner mentioned earlier, there's a lot of buzz building. People are starting to lose their minds about exactly what's going to be there. We should go through some of these rumors, some of these predictions. We have a big countdown on the site, kind of going down the big three and other predictions, and just talking about exactly what we think is going to be at the show and how this whole thing is going to work. To kick things off, we should get to an email from Chad from Chicago just to set the table here. He says, "Hey, GI crew, each year GameInformer.com seems to put out E3 predictions. However, as industry insiders, you must be privy to a lot of embargoed and confidential information to be revealed to the general public at the press conferences. Since all the good big news is likely either embargoed or unsubstantiated rumors, do your predictions come down to a safe breakdown of things that have already been partially revealed, watered down predictions to avoid any potential conflict with embargoes, or some type of firewall between editors that know confidential information and those writing the prediction articles?" This is a very good question from Chad. Take it away, Reiner.
Yeah, so just to put that into perspective, I was yesterday I did a podcast with someone that works for Sony, is a Sony employee, a PlayStation employee, has no idea what's going to be at the press conference. Like they really keep this under lock and key, and it seems like they try to tighten it up more and more each year. So the big surprises, they want to be big surprises. They
For
try
sure.
to limit it as much as they can between the developers, the hardware manufacturers, and internal employees. We sometimes hear about stuff, stuff under embargo, all that. obviously we're not going to talk about any of that stuff, right? But there is so much more out there. I would say 99% of it,
Totally.
we're still guessing. Right?
Yeah, it's a very much a tip of the iceberg thing where you are planning appointments and it's like, oh, looks like this thing might be there. Some exciting stuff in there, but it's not like we know what the hell these press conferences are going to be like, or a crazy majority of the stuff that's going to be there.
Yeah, it's all us just kind of looking at what's out there, what the developers have done before, the kind of their what's worked, what hasn't, and then making our best assumptions based on that.
Haven't seen a God of War in a while. Might be kind of time for that.
That's the
that
thing,
kind of
because I posted in like the Overblood Facebook group asking like, hey, what are you guys expecting from E3? Or I think I said like, what are the big studios that have been quiet for a while that you expect to hear something from? Which is my favorite question, is just to look across the industry and be like, who has been too quiet? And a lot of the guesses, it was stuff that was too recent, where people would be like, oh, Naughty Dog's next game, or all these other studios that just put out something. But I realized like the secret is just look at like our top 50 games from like 2013, 2014, and then see what those studios have been up to. And it's like, oh, I haven't heard from them in a while. I bet they're up to bat. Because if you put that 3 to 4 year span around there, that's where the money is, kid.
That's where the money
cans.
is. So did you go back? Did you go back and look at that list then?
No, but just thinking about it, you think about like the big 2013 games, like the big one, I feel like maybe the biggest studio relatively that has also been quiet the longest is Warner Brothers Montreal.
And one of them,
WB built up this entire studio. They're working on some Lego Chima stuff a little bit.
They did some DLC for the
Arkham Knight.
Yeah.
So that was a fraction of the team, because they also did Arkham Origins. But there were a lot of people up there, and they've probably been working on something. Reiner, I remember when you beat Arkham Origins, you're like, it's going to be the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, and it seems to line up with the movie. But now that they announced Injustice 2, which is a very different game. Like you would imagine Suicide Squad would probably be like Arkham Knight, right? Like with multiple playable characters.
Right, yeah.
But will they double up on DC properties at E3? I would say probably not.
Really? So you think Suicide Squad won't be there now because
now
of
that Injustice has been announced, I'm guessing probably not.
Interesting.
You think
Why not save that for another show for a reveal? I mean, we're in con season. There's cons like every month.
And why do you think it's a Suicide Squad game and not like a Superman game?
Because the game ended with Slade Wilson. Spoiler: Arkham Origins. The game ended with Slade Wilson, who's Deathstroke, part of the Suicide Squad, in jail, and then Waller comes in, basically says, "Hey, we're forming a team."
You say like, why don't they save it for something else? But you also mentioned the movie. I mean, there's never going to be more buzz for Suicide Squad than right now.
Right.
But is it just getting to that weird thing of, well, it's not based on the movie, so how much would it really be able to capitalize on it?
Yep. Yeah, and maybe they don't want to like kind of mix those signals if it is its own universe. So maybe a Comic-Con reveal that might make more sense to me.
Oh, interesting.
If it is a 2017 game, if it's 2016, you got to go now. Like we're running out of months, right?
Let's do it.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that Injustice is the game they will have, and we're still not going to hear anything from Warner now. I know we just put it in our bold predictions that it'd be there, but now that that's out there, probably not.
What do you guys think? What are the other big studios that you haven't heard from in a while and that they're about due?
Well, I mean, they already released an image purportedly from it, but I've been wondering for a long time what Capcom Vancouver's been up to.
Yeah.
At Dead Rising Studio.
Dead Rising 3, I mean, I guess that was the launch of the Xbox One. It doesn't feel that long ago, but that's a quick turnaround because it was leaked. Dead Rising 4 seems to be on the way.
And it's like a reboot or going back to square one at least.
Do you think so? From
Frank
that one
and-
leaked screenshot?
Yeah,
Frank
isn't
in
it?
Willamette, Colorado.
Yeah, Frank in the original city again. So
Is that what it is? Is that what that screenshot
that's
was
what
showing?
people are saying. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I
Could
think that was leaked info with it. So
that could
That'd
be
be
interesting.
crazy.
Would you want a reboot?
no.
I think at this point, it's not like Mirror's Edge 2 reboot. I mean, like, there's been enough stuff where you could, like, think, oh, let's just tell the story in a little slightly different way. I'd be fine with it because I think ultimately that's just a game about.
What if it was
killing a
like
bunch of
Frank
zombies.
10 years later, he returns to the city?
Yeah,
See, that's
that'd be
awesome.
fine too. Yeah,
that's cool.
That could be interesting. It'd be
It's
fun to go
called-
back to that mall.
All the mannequins are broken and you can't use them to beat things up anymore.
Well, he might go out to the rest of the city, though, too. It might not just be the mall.
And it's
Yeah.
called Dead Rising 4, at least on that pamphlet that we saw. So it better be a sequel of some kind.
Dead Rising Forever. Just to keep going down these quiet studios, a lot of people, and I'm amazed, maybe I just am not in touch with the fan base, but so many people are curious about Sony Bend. Are they in Oregon? Is that right? It must
Yep.
be.
Yep.
But there was a leaked trademark of a game called Dead Don't Ride that a lot of people are connecting to them. But they have been quiet for quite a while, and so in theory, we could hear from them at the show.
Yeah, they did
cool.
Uncharted on Vita.
Yeah.
Siphon Filter games before that.
Secret Agent Clank was them?
Maybe
them?
Bubsy 3D, I think.
Cream of the crop.
Classic.
No, clearly there's a lot of developers doing something there, and people are champing at the bit. Sorry, Jeff Cork, to figure out what the hell's going on there. Another one that's been quiet for a shocking amount of time when you look into it, that game company. Think about it. Like, I would imagine my prediction will be some sort of PSVR based game, but Genova Chen, the creative director for Journey, he's still there, but Journey was 2013.
A lot of people
2012?
left that studio, right?
A couple people did,
But
yeah.
there's still people there. I was
They went
kind
and
of
did
curious.
Abzu, right? One of the guys.
right. One of
Yeah.
the people
I
that
was
left.
like, are they even still around? That's how old they or how long they haven't been doing anything. I guess.
Yeah. Does anybody want to put money down on
I think that's
PSVR for that game
I
company?
think you're totally right. I think that's
that's
probably
has to
where
be.
they end up.
Oh, thanks,
good
everybody.
option.
My God, this
Good
feels good.
option.
Another one that people were talking about a lot is Retro. Ever since Tropical Freeze, the last Donkey Kong game, they've been quiet. I would imagine the big Nintendo studios like that and, the Tokyo Mario developers, they're going to save all that for NX, I would
It
imagine.
would be stupid not to.
That's the only
Yeah.
thing is like Nintendo could surprise us, but I kind of wonder if Nintendo's not even going to do much.
Well, I mean, they've
Well,
said they're
They
showing
have said
Zelda
that.
and they're
I
doing
mean,
some live streams.
They could be tricking us, but
I don't think they are.
This could be two different conversations too. Like just because a studio has been quiet does not mean they are going to start blabbing at E3. Like especially
Exactly.
like on Nintendo's end, they've been very clear about what to expect from them from E3. So
that's why I'm thinking Retro might not. We might not see something from them, even though they are undoubtedly working on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one that someone posted in the Overblood group that I forgot about, but a couple years ago at E3, remember when they showed the remnants of Criterion's racing game? Where it was like, hey, race in a hang glider, race in this car,
that's
race
right, yeah.
these Matchbox
Oh my
cars,
gosh,
race
yeah.
everything under the sun, race your eyebrows against each other. And we just haven't heard anything from them. So maybe that'll be a big showing, is finding out what the hell that weird development video was
was
all
that
about.
2 years ago now?
I think so, yeah.
gosh.
I think it was 2 years ago because that was also like the Battlefront teaser year. Yeah. Speaking of Battlefront, what do you guys think about Star Wars? Are we going to see Amy Hennig's game there?
I would love to
Yes.
see that. That would be amazing.
I
Actually.
think we're going to see a teaser for that and another Star Wars game.
Battlefront 2 that has
two
been
Star
rumbling
No,
around?
I think we're going to see Battlefront DLC.
Okay.
I think we're going to see a teaser for Hennig's, and I think we're going to see a teaser for something else.
So you don't think we can get multiple DC games, but multiple Star Wars games is definitely a go?
Yeah, I
keep
definitely think.
milking
But
that
I
cow.
think we're where your Suicide Squad is like kind of double dipping with the movie, and then also in Injustice because you got Harley Quinn on all three of these. I think these are going to be three very distinct things.
Yeah. I think I don't think EA is going to open up their press conference with like a crazy demo of the Amy Hennig visceral game, but I think it's going to be on the scale of that Battlefront teaser from a couple years ago, where it's just a snow speeder crashing.
Yeah, I think like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
What is this thing?
When they've already said-
no name even.
They've said no Mass Effect, right?
No, Mass Effect will be there.
Oh,
Oh,
God, I didn't
well,
even think
for
about
Yeah,
some
that.
there's
reason I thought they
Aaron
said that.
Flynn, the studio or general manager of BioWare. There's a note up on BioWare's website. He says, "I'll see you at EA Play."
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
Well, it'd be cool if we got Mass Effect and Star Wars. That'd be awesome, actually.
Or that new IP that BioWare is working on, where they showed a hut in the woods, little space hut.
Yeah, is that still going with Casey Hudson gone though?
That's also a question. That's in my Microsoft predictions, by the way. I bet Casey Hudson takes a stage to announce not some general new IP, but just to connect the goodwill associated with Casey Hudson and Mass Effect to some sort of new Microsoft brand. That'll be my Microsoft prediction. Going down other studios that have been quiet for a while, there's this little game in this little studio from Rockstar. Do we expect Rockstar to make any
That
sort
Mark
of entrance?
Wahlberg movie?
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
right.
the energy drink.
Telltale's
That was
Rockstar.
one of the first companies I thought of when you asked.
Yeah.
And I was like, but we probably won't be there.
They normally aren't there. Last year, they were there on the Sony stage, I think, to announce like a bundle and talk about GTA 5 a little bit on next gen. They normally aren't there, but man, some of those studios, San Diego specifically, the
Oh,
Red
yeah.
Dead Studio, has been quiet for so long.
Well,
no.
there's the Red Dead reboot, or not reboot, but remake rumors, aren't there?
Remake?
That we're going to
we have a remaster in our bold predictions on the site. We're
Oh,
saying
is that
Maybe
what
that
it
was
is?
just us.
there might be a Red Dead
Yeah.
remaster.
Which I could see that, but I'd
Finally come out on PC, that'd be great.
I'd prefer if they announced the new Red Dead, obviously.
That would be awesome,
Yeah.
but we're all thinking no Rockstar. Put
I
money
think it's
down.
a long shot, I think.
I'm
Okay.
guessing
I would love it.
If we do, I think the remaster is probably the best shot, but then maybe one of those long forgotten Grand Theft Auto 5 story missions.
Oh, yeah.
The DLC that was announced, they talked about, and then it's just kind of disappeared.
Well, it seems like they are making so much bank off GTA Online. They're still updating the hell out of that thing, and the whole Leslie Benz lawsuit, all the numbers that came out of that thing. It's like, well, GTA Online seems to be making so much money. Would a new chapter starring one of those guys really even be worth it financially? But
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see.
A lot of people also were talking about Borderlands 3. It's about time for Borderlands 3.
They just started work on it.
Yeah, that's the thing. They announced that they're working on it. But Battleborn just came out. I don't think 2K is ready to start pushing this thing marketing-wise yet, unless, I don't know, Sony or Microsoft really wants to champion and get that name out
Right.
there. But
Unless somebody else was doing pre-production work, which would be weird.
maybe the Australia studio, maybe they're collaborating more than we realize.
Could be. Yeah.
They made the pre-sequel. What do you guys think about Resident Evil?
It'll be there. Yeah.
You think
The new
7's
one?
gonna be there?
Yeah, I think 7 will be there.
Oh my gosh, that'd be great. I was hoping that just the remake of 2 would be there.
I'm sure it will. And then that and Umbrella Corps, you think like,
And Dead Rising.
The only
Yeah,
thing
well,
is, like,
yeah.
wasn't it just a year ago that they announced that they actually were going to do it, the remake of 2?
yeah,
So I just feel like maybe that's still not quite enough time, but
could be. And you look at like at least the director of Resident Evil 6, which is from 2012, like he hasn't been doing anything since. They're clearly that crazy development team that put a lot of work into 6.
Yeah.
They've been doing something. I just don't know if they want to hold off on that until they get the remake and Umbrella Corps out the door. Just marketing
They
wise,
could.
it's going to be confusing. But
we talk about doubling up, but it's been so long from that team.
it's been a long time.
And I'm going to guess Dead Rising 4 will be an Xbox exclusive again.
yeah, okay.
That'll be at Microsoft's. That'll be one of
Yeah,
the big
sure.
games for Microsoft.
You just think they had a good time with Microsoft last time?
I think, yeah, Microsoft probably ponied up for it. And
Well, that kind of
There's
game
money.
is only possible through the power of the cloud processing.
Cloud processing.
Cloud processing.
So let's see. We got David Lewis who writes in from New York saying, I usually get extremely excited about E3 season, but for some reason I feel pretty pessimistic about it. It feels like there's an overall lack of potential surprise. I'm curious to see Zelda, but I don't need a 90-minute demo to sell me on a game I already want. Most of Sony's big fall 2016 games are now 2017. Microsoft has potential with Gears and Recore, but I don't have an Xbox One, so it's not like I can play those anyway. Do you think that there could be any big surprises this year?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he's saying
they're
there's a lack
surprised,
of
so we don't know what they
surprise?
are.
What is-
I mean, all it takes is like Ken Levine walking out on like PlayStation stage.
Do you think it's going to
Tripping.
happen? He's going to announce that weird project you talked about on this podcast?
Yeah, he's been going at it that for what, 2 years?
It's been a while. 3 years, yeah.
It does seem like it takes a while to really gestate a project, but
9 months, I'd argue, somewhere around there.
Or I mean, Gabe Newell coming out on stage and people just
That'd be
losing their
amazing.
minds.
Well, that would be the biggie. Does anybody want to put money down?
no, I don't
For
want
what,
to
are
put
you
it
like
down, but-
insinuating Half-Life 3? Is that what's going on here?
No, it's just some sort of Valve something.
What if?
A new
And
controller.
Left 4 Dead 3.
This is something one of my friends brought up yesterday. Is what if Microsoft's new machine, codenamed Scorpio,
Right.
which I don't know why it's called that because they always name things after cities. Like the Slim codename is Montreal, supposedly,
I thought I heard Edmonton.
or Edmonton, one of those two. Yeah,
Okay.
but Canada. But what if that system was designed to run with a partnership with Valve and run Steam?
There's no way they would do that.
Microsoft got rid of their store and put everything on Steam, so it's on PC, and they've
There's
already
no
made the
way.
commitment
They're
to
trying to
PC.
there's any
crush
way that
out
would
Steam.
happen.
There's no way.
That's what I said to him, but then I started thinking about it more and more, and I was like, Steam Machine, that was kind of their play. That kind of failed. Microsoft now going into PC.
You're
what if
nuts.
they-
You're nuts.
Microsoft now going into PC? What are you talking about?
They're
That's
games.
insane. Microsoft finally getting into PC.
One of the
What is
biggest
that- what do you
debates
mean
of
by
the
that?
last 2 months has been Quantum Break's on PC.
Right,
Why did
right.
I buy an Xbox? Why are all these games coming to PC?
Microsoft makes
It's
Windows.
been
You
one of the
realize
biggest
this, right?
debates for the last 3 months.
There's no way. There's no
But
way
anyway,
Microsoft and Valve.
That
think
is
that's
one of the
insane.
things. But I was like, that would be huge. But yeah, there's no chance of that.
Right.
But there is. When
But
Gabe comes
imagine.
out on stage, you're always like, oh God, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like, what
It's
are they
true.
going to do?
It could
Like,
be crazy.
Could it be Half-Life 3?
I
Could
think
it
it'd
be
be-
Portal? Could it be Left 4 Dead?
I think it'd be Left 4 Dead before anything.
I just want to see Matt Stone and Trey Parker walk on stage again.
And they probably will because
that
they're
would be
showing
fun.
the new
Yeah.
South Park RPG
Which
they're
they
super
announced
excited
last year.
about. Yeah.
That's the point where you hear every Ubisoft executive just hold their breath.
Yeah.
Like,
Hello.
please don't say anything dumb.
Yep.
Hello, Game Informers, says Scott Devine. Is there a Sonic Adventure 3? Is Super Charizard, Super Mewtwo, and Super Lucario homage to Dragon Ball Z set to debut in Pokemon Sun and Moon, including Charla, a female Charizard with a pink bow? I think the answer is yes, Scott. Let's see. We got Darren from Stillwater who writes in. He says, I've got 3 bold predictions for you guys and girls. Let's break these down, Mr. Stillwater.
Where's the girls?
You'll see. New Assassin's Creed announced for early 2017 and will basically be a movie tie-in game.
No.
New Dead Space revealed that is a reboot for the series.
No.
We will get the official name for the NX, which will be called the Nintendo Game System.
He's not doing super well.
Yeah, I think you struck out there. 3 for 3. I'm saying no way to all 3 of those.
Can't win if you don't play, though. So thank you for that.
Yes,
You know the kind of
absolutely.
sad thing about
Chef Cork?
but Dead Space and EA is like they keep putting all their developers on Star Wars projects now. It's like, what is it? That Toronto studio now, Visceral, Dice, BioWare. Like it's.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
Yes, they're going to make you bank. You know, that's a safe bet to make Star Wars games. But at the same time, it's like all these properties that they maybe were working on before, or chances for new IP, are being consumed by Star Wars.
Yeah,
And I
where's
think
the BioWare Austin Shadow Realms? Let's get that going again.
Star Wars is great, but I mean, creatively, that limits you to what you can do. You
Yeah.
can't have full-on dismemberment and all that crazy stuff like you did in Dead Space. And I like Dead Space.
I like Dead Space a lot.
I would
And-
like to be able to go ding, ding, ding when he said Dead Space 3.
And
Or
EA
4.
doesn't own Star Wars, so that's potentially could disappear as
Yeah.
soon as
Yeah.
that contract's done. So
Certainly.
then what are they left with?
Good question. Jacob Beats writes in, and I forgot about this. He says Dragon Quest VII was, I believe, announced to be shown off during Nintendo's E3 stream. That is true. They're showing
true.
off the 3DS
Are they
version.
really? All
Yep.
right.
Will this showing of the first mainstream Dragon Quest game released in English since 2009 be enough to bolster fresh enthusiasm for the series?
No.
No.
Not over here.
But I do think that if they are bringing Dragon Quest XI to the West, that there's a good chance we could see that on Sony's stage on the PS4.
Yeah,
I think it could happen.
sure.
Something I didn't realize until recently is that like a lot of people complain about Dragon Quest X not being brought over and stuff. And it turns out that a hang-up is the rights to Akira Toriyama's art, the Dragon Ball Z artist, because you have to like license that differently when you go international, and so it becomes much more expensive. But I never thought about that angle. So I hope that Toriyama's art, even though I love it, like that alone doesn't keep Dragon Quest XI from coming out, because I would like to play that on PS4. Anyways, we got Jalen Liu writing in and says, I predict that at this year's E3, Activision will announce that they're starting on Infinite Warfare from scratch. That they're rebooting it.
What does that
Wait,
mean?
after they just announced it?
Yes. I think that is safe to
That's-
assume there is 0% chance
I
that
think
that is
that sounds
happening.
insane, yeah.
But thank you for writing in, Jalen. You're the best. Sony. Let's go for the big 3.
Okay.
Obviously, the rumors about them showing off new hardware, PlayStation Neo. Are we all 100% locked in that's going to be at the press conference?
Yes.
It's got to be some kind of thing. It's got to be connected to VR, right?
Well, I think the idea is that it's like
No.
baking in some of the guts just to make sure PSVR runs better and you don't need the breakout box then separately.
And it's also their new format, the UHD Ultra High Definition, which they have started releasing movies as of March, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be a player for that, but not game.
Yeah, you get that. Kind of like when the PS3 came out, it was like one of the first Blu-ray players anyone ever had. Now
Yeah.
this will be like the first UHD player a lot of people have.
Are we all
For 4K TVs.
are we all set on this being called PlayStation 4K? Is there any way they don't do that?
That would make a lot of sense.
It makes too much sense.
Xbox 720.
That's what they're PlayStation NX.
Yeah, I mean, they did Morpheus and Neo, which is weird, right? It's like total Matrix thing.
Yeah.
But they ended up calling that, they did the smart thing there and just called it PlayStation VR,
Right.
right?
Remember
they
the
didn't do
PlayStation-
like a Vita.
Remember when PlayStation 4 was called Orbis?
Yeah.
And that was the big rumors that, PlayStation Orbis coming out.
Ugh.
And then it changed to Forbis, then they just cut out
And
the
that
rest.
Spider-Man controller thing for, was that PlayStation 3 or 4?
Boomer.
That was
Three.
three.
That was
three.
Speaking of Spider-Man.
Speaking of Spider-Man.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a rumor.
I mean, there is a rumor that there's going to be a new Spider-Man game developed for the PlayStation 4. Connections loosely to maybe Sucker Punch doing it. A couple of cryptic hints
I mean, it
here and
seems-
there.
Seemed pretty. The rumor seems strong to me.
Yes, it certainly seems like there's
Yeah,
some sort
it
of
seems-
Spider-Man on PS4 game.
Odd, but I mean, I'm actually pretty positive about it because I like that studio a lot.
And you're a real Spider nut.
And I'm a
Sony-
spider nut.
Sony has the rights to the movies, right? Still through 2017, I believe.
Marvel
is doing Homecoming,
Yeah.
that new Spider. They worked out a deal with Marvel and Sony to bring
Right.
Spider-Man to the cinematic universe, but
Yeah.
Sony still has the movie rights, I believe, so they can do like Venom and all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's confusing.
they could potentially do a different Spider-Man. The rumor is Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah,
It's
because
kind of
on
cool.
Sucker Punch, they are recruiting for people and they're working on a spectacular project. Spectacular. They keep throwing in that word. That's part of like that is the breadcrumb that we're going off of largely for like connecting this to Sucker Punch.
Yeah, because I mean, there's Spectacular Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Extraordinary Spider-Man. They keep saying Spectacular, which is very strange.
Disappointing Spider-Man.
It just seems weird because like it seems like Disney doesn't care that much about licensing out to video games.
Really?
So well,
there's Star
to
Wars.
console stuff.
He's talking
I meant
Avengers and
specifically for Marvel.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like they want to use that Marvel license in video games that much for some reason.
think, yeah,
other than on iOS, but
Where they make the money,
yeah, I guess.
that we know of. There was that canceled first-person Avengers game
Yeah.
that THQ was making, right?
Right.
That looked pretty cool.
From
I
the
thought.
Operation Genesis
Yeah.
team.
And it was also being handled in-house through Infinity.
Yeah,
Right,
some degree,
exactly.
too.
I guess
Let's not
there's
forget
that. That's true.
Yeah, there's that whole thing. But with that gone now,
Yeah, maybe
who
that
knows?
opens the door to more licensing deals.
Just give us another Ultimate Alliance.
So at the most, maybe a teaser trailer for a Spider-Man game, Sony. Rumors of Knack 2.
Yep.
I think that's likely.
Sure. I'll politely nod
don't
during
know.
that segment.
Why not?
That game seemed okay. What do we expect from Detroit Become Human? Do we expect a gameplay demo on stage? This is the new David Cage.
Maybe
Quantic Dream.
Detroit becomes something else.
That's what I was saying. The name should probably change.
I like the Michigan style, just like calling this game based on this one thing.
I like the first part, Detroit.
Yeah.
And
just
then
call
when
it that.
it's become human, people are like beyond human. It's like, no, that's beyond two souls.
It's called Detroit Become Confused. God of War, are we all locked in? Is that going to be there?
Yep.
That sounds
Absolutely.
really strong.
It seems like a good showpiece. Like, here's your action
Here's the
sequence.
last,
for
here's the
Sony
thing you
fans.
want to see.
The
Yeah.
director said it's in development. That was
Right.
2 PlayStation experiences ago.
Right.
And there's leaks of like linking it to Norse mythology.
God, I hope so.
Which
God,
would be
I hope
so
so.
cool.
That would be really cool.
I mean, he killed everyone in Olympus, so
He
that'd be a
killed
boring
Mount
game.
Olympus itself. He chopped off its dumb head.
So that we can imagine, like, if you could put an advertisement on Wikipedia, you're going to want to advertise on the Norse mythology entry
Yeah.
and World War I entry because it's going to get a lot of traffic from gamers who want to sound like experts.
Looking through hardcore
Because
history.
we don't know a
for
whole lot
Greek
about
mythology.
history
Nope.
or world wars.
Nope.
Don't get me started on the World Wars. Also, prediction out of the blue, Sony stage. Seems like Undertale and Stardew Valley are ripe for a console port. I could see that being on the Sony stage. Just like, oh, by the way, here's a couple beloved PC games finally making their way.
They both
can
make
see
sense
that.
for Sony.
Yeah, for
Especially
sure.
Undertale, I feel like. I don't know why.
Next, it's Underdog.
What about they seem to have fallen in love with the listening to the fans and giving into fans' dreams.
Sure.
With Final Fantasy VII Remake,
Shenmue. Last Guardian, they decided to
Yeah,
fund.
what is there anything left? Half-Life?
Yeah, Half-Life.
Yeah, there's always Half-Life.
Yeah, what are they going to come back up and resurrect now this year, you think?
Yeah, or just like that long shot.
Kojima's
right.
career.
Hey, somebody
Kojima
could bring
could be
Kojima
there.
on the
Yeah,
stage just for a
Kojima could be there.
teaser. I mean, just to get his name out there.
Yep.
Might as well. I could see him just walking out and at least introducing some other game or something.
Maybe with Norman Reedus or something. Like, hey, he's going to be the star of this new game. And they don't show anything.
Wink, wink. Yeah, I think it could be very loose, but it'd be nice to get Kojima out there.
He's only been working for, 3 or 4 months now?
Right.
So it's
So we're going to see like part
almost
of the No Man's Sky demo, and then Sean Murray's going to shrug and sheepishly put on PlayStation VR goggles.
Yeah,
He says it's out now.
No way.
that's going to happen. It's
No
got to
way.
be in VR.
No way.
You don't think it's gonna be in VR?
I don't think it's going to be in VR.
That's why I
Really?
think it was delayed.
I agree.
Was to add that in.
Would you
Two
like to put
against
money
one.
on it?
$5.
All right. Here, reach across the table.
Oh, the old
You
reach
big
over.
lug.
You guys
Come
should
on.
do like a lunch or
Can-
something.
can I be a
Why
conduit?
$5?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Wait, am I in on this now?
Oh,
you are.
boy.
You
I think
are
it's
really
$10
cold, by
for
the
you
way.
now.
I know. All right, moving on to Microsoft. Hang on, let me write this down. $5 Cork. Collect it at E3. Okay, great. Microsoft. New hardware. We're going to see. The rumor is like a slim version of Xbox One.
That's one of them.
Okay. And then
supposedly, man, why would you announce that? Why
don't
would you
think
show
they
that
would.
at E3?
I think that leak bit them in the ass, and they don't want to show it.
Scorpio.
Yeah, the next
That's supposed
more
to be like
upgradable
super
one.
powerful new machine.
So many flops.
You have
Yeah.
to plug it into the special weird outlet that your dryer goes into.
Gears of War 4 is probably going to be a big action sequence. That might be the big showstopper.
Or does that kick off the show?
That might kick off the show.
Yeah, they
Because they
started
usually do,
Halo
like,
4
Halo,
that way.
yeah.
Halo Wars 2, they might show gameplay. I know
That'll
it's
be-
tough to convey an RTS on
At
stage,
some
but
point in the,
That'll be sizzle reel, I bet.
yeah.
I think it's
like
like a cinematic
like
trailer.
a cinematic trailer.
They
yeah.
might
Like
actually
Blur
show
doing
it.
something badass.
Those cinematic trailers from the first one were really good, actually.
Yeah. Just don't cut to an ant view of like the world.
Yeah, never show what it
Don't
actually
show
looks
the
like.
RTS gameplay on stage.
You sound like the stage director.
Yeah.
My prediction is Casey Hudson out there. Are there any other things? Recore, somebody mentioned in that email.
You already said did Rising 4.
Yep.
Teaser for the new Halo.
No way.
It feels
way
soon
too
for
early.
that.
Way
No,
too early.
I mean, they do this every time. It'll be the teaser, and then legit E3 showing, then release. So it's every other year. It's Gears, Halo, Gears,
Yeah.
Halo, right?
I don't know. I think with
That
Halo
was
Wars 2,
360.
do you think they're going to bring Spielberg on to talk about some like the Halo TV show that is supposedly still coming? The other one, not the one they already released? No?
I think his video game version died. I think that Spielberg's gone.
Crackdown?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that'll be there.
Come back?
Okay.
No, you don't think so?
Nintendo. Any talk of the NX? Any acknowledgement of the NX?
Didn't they say ahead of time, it's like, we're not bringing it?
Right. And some people are like, oh, they're lying. It'll be there. I just don't think it's going to be there. Always play conservative bets with Nintendo again and again and again.
So that system's coming out next March.
In theory.
That means, in theory, developers and publishers have been working with this hardware for a while.
Yeah.
They're all going to be in LA.
Right.
A lot of them are going to be drinking, partying, talking with each other. I think we're going to hear about NX.
Yep.
We're at least going to get some rumors wafting through.
I think you're going to see some of the biggest stories to come from the show are going to be NX stories.
I'm so excited.
And don't put it past Ubisoft either, who before the 360 and the Xbox One and PS4 were announced, they showed Watch Dogs.
Mm-hmm. And 1313 was also
And everybody
shown,
was
yeah?
just watching
So
that,
did
just
LucasArts.
going, this seems a little advanced for the new
high-end
machines.
PCs. High-end PCs, everybody. Hey, high-end PCs.
Did they
What's
reveal the Wii and the Red Steel cover
We
story?
did that, yeah. But they showed people like Billy Berghammer, who worked for us at the time, saw like Paper Airplane demo, like throwing it with the Wii mode.
that? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Like there was like a pre-briefing on all that stuff.
right.
But now they said they're not showing it. They said they're not bringing it, right?
I don't think they're
I don't know.
doing
I remember
anything.
the wording, but I think all those other people working on it, all being in the same spot together, something's going to leak.
Yeah, because their job is to get their games like hype.
Right.
And you cannot do that if you can't talk about it. And it's like, well, do we keep Nintendo happy or do we get
My money's on
train
those
going.
ukulele rookies over there. They're gonna start leaking about something.
Or you'll see a game that's like coming to Xbox One, PS4, PC, and other platforms. And you'll be like, huh.
Right. God, I love hardware hype. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it is.
Zelda. I mean, they're gonna be showing a ton of it. I think
So
they're just gonna
excited.
live stream the entire game, from all I can tell. Yeah,
Seems
I'm
like
really
a
excited to
lot,
see that.
Yeah. Seems like more than you need to see of Zelda, honestly.
Well, that's
Like,
what the email's getting at. Yeah.
Nintendo just needs to say, like, hey, we're making a new Zelda, and this is when it's out. And
Are they
that's
gonna
all
name
they
it?
need to do.
Well, Reiner already named it. It was like Fire Princess or something.
I can't remember what I named it. Fire Princess sounds pretty
Fire
good.
Princess?
Is it weird of me to say I'm more excited for this Zelda than I have been any other Zelda except Ocarina of Time?
Why is that?
Because I think it's the first one that really breaks the mold again. Like they are going more, if it is traditional, like true open world.
And if
Where
the
it was
art
like-
style can live up to those videos, man,
Yeah, like we had isometric, and then we had Ocarina, and then we went back, kept kind of hammering home that Ocarina formula, and then isometric again.
Right.
Now this is like, let's try something bigger in scope.
Yeah, I'm super excited
I
about
feel like
it.
the Twilight Princess hype was pretty high.
But yeah, I mean, every time a Zelda comes out, it's
Well,
like,
yeah, I don't know.
can't
That
wait
one in
to play it,
particular
right?
seemed higher than usual. So, I mean, since then, at the very least.
but that feeling
the
of
most hype since
maybe it's
then.
more the feeling not really knowing what to expect of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Like when I saw Twilight Princess, I knew. When I saw Wind Waker, I knew. Right? Like it was like that's a traditional dungeon. That's a traditional open world. Waters. I get it. But this seems like it's a much bigger thing.
Do
So-
we want to make any predictions on female Link? Old Linkle being a character in there? There's always rumblings of, it's about time, Nintendo. Let's do it.
Yeah, she's got to be in there.
Think so. Gotta be.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
why design that character and just have it in the Dynasty Warriors type of game? Hyrule
Well, she had like a
Warriors.
crossbow and stuff.
I
Like,
know,
it's
but
not-
why?
I don't know.
Why just leave it there? I mean, it
It
seems,
like a weird place to debut that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Pokemon Sun and Moon, they're going to be showing off more. They're going to see some more gameplay of that. Paper Mario Color Splash, which I'm excited for. It seems like a lot of people aren't talking about it, but I hope that it makes a,
Have they
a
announced
big
that they're showing that?
splash. Yeah, they're going to be streaming it.
all right, cool.
I think. I forget if it was in that stream thing, but by God, they need to.
Yeah, they should show it off.
For other E3 stuff. We should point out we are going to be posting a show next week. If everything goes according to plan, it'll be up on that Thursday night, regular time, recorded in our lovely hotel room. If you remember the audio being different last year, expect that again. Get ready for a slowed down, slurry, drunk Jeff Cork to be on the mic again.
Again, I do not know what you're talking
I
about.
don't know.
Sleepy.
But yes, we will have a podcast next week talking about like top
Awesome.
5 coolest things that we saw at E3 and whatnot.
I just had a thought.
Yeah.
What if in that Zelda game,
Uh-huh.
like Metal Gear Solid 2, they kill off Link within like the first half hour or something, and it's like Doctor Who, his essence goes into a new character, and then you play as what's her name, Linkle?
Linkle.
Jeez, What if that's the big?
There's
better
no
name.
way they would do that.
What if
He
you just
turned-
play as Zelda the whole time? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, that'd be cool. Yeah, I would rather play as Zelda, but they created this new character. I just got to think she's got to be in some.
I don't know. I think there's a 20% chance that it's a potential female playable character. That's where I'm putting it. Anything from Game Informer's coverage you want to point out, Reiner? Anything people should know?
We're going to be updating the website around the clock with all the breaking news, playing the demos. Definitely check out our press conferences. We're going to be doing live commentary to give you our thoughts on the reveals and announcements and all that stuff.
Twitch and YouTube?
Yep, and make sure you get there 15 minutes beforehand because we're going to have a little pregame chat and then go into the press conference, and you can watch along with us and kind of hear our thoughts as they go. And then, just all week long, just keep your eyes, keep checking into the website because there's going to be a steady feed of all of our writers, everyone, all hands on deck, writing stories about what they saw and the rumors and announcements and all that stuff.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
Hi.
E3 Hype Train.
Everybody ride the train.
I'm excited.
Come on and ride it.
All right. Should we move on to some regular emails from people?
Sure.
Let's do it.
And we're back to read some emails from people. These lovely people have sent emails into podcast@GameInformer.com. You can send an email in, and then at the end of the segment, every week we choose the best email, not necessarily a question, best thought, best anything, and we ship them out the nicest thing that we own, which is the rest of Reiner's hair. Last time he got a haircut, it's just a big old bag of hair. It's the Game Informer special.
He used to be like Rapunzel.
All right, let's kick things off. We got Anthony from Malvern, Pennsylvania. Mulva?
That sounds like he's been hard pressed to say where he's from, and he just looks around the room and chokes.
Hey, Ben, longtime reader and listener here. I just wanted to say that it looks like Dan should have a voice more like JV's and that JV should have a voice more like Dan's.
Done.
Has anyone else noticed this?
We switched them, actually.
We did in post.
Digitally,
Yeah. We should explain that for the YouTube version. Kyle Ellis writes in. Anyways, thank you, Anthony. Kyle Ellis writes in and says, "Hey, GI crew, I'm writing into the podcast this week to talk about one of your finest, Jeffrey Cork.
Oh.
Jeff always goes above and beyond for fans and deserves to be recognized for his contribution to making the GI community great. Jeff always adds, and I would say just as much value as Dan tacked the GI show each week he is on, both the audio and the YouTube version. Jeff's fair opinions and his delivery are what make the podcast great. Thank you for all that you do, Jeff Cork."
Oh, that's very, very nice. Thank you
Is
so
that
much.
Jeff Cork's mom?
Well, no, he ended it. It was thank you all you do from Jeff Cork.
Yep.
This is exactly
Me.
it. He has this. He puts a cell in here too if you want to give him a call or just send him some cool selfies later on.
I already know email of the week's going to be.
Jonathan from Indiana writes in and says, "This question is for Jeff Cork. Tell me, Jeff,
the hell?
how do you
I'll see you
define
later.
how do you define fun?"
Oh, no. How do you define fun?
I don't know. That's what Jonathan wants to know.
That's really a good question. That's something I wrestle with a lot. I think, am I having fun right now? I
Right.
don't know.
Every social engagement you go to, seeing your children be born.
That's not fun.
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
Scary.
Well, you got a smile on your face, Jonathan. There we go. We got David Lewis writing in from New York. He says, "Hey, Ben Hanson and GI crew. What was each of your favorite moments from a cover story trip? Love the show and keep up the amazing work."
I feel like we answer this question like almost every other week.
Did we really?
I don't know, but maybe we just. I feel like I've talked about the Dead Space 2 trip I went on a lot.
I don't remember that.
Because like it was one of the earliest cover trips I did.
Okay.
I was a big fan of the first Dead Space, and then we saw the first one, and like that demo they showed us was awesome.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I do
And
remember
like
you
there's
talking
the
about
whole
this.
like that first scene where you like break out, the glass breaks and you blast out into space.
You
the
kill the
first time.
space,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you kill space. It was a good one.
Oh, nice.
Also Portal 2, because I got to play Portal 2 as like one of the first people to play Portal 2.
Oh, it must have been awesome. Jeff Cork?
I really had a good time on it was an Arkham Night trip. And we went and saw, what is it? What's the name of the?
Faith No More? No, it was The Drowned Man from Punch Drunk, the immersive theater experience
Yes.
that was just trippy as hell.
That was probably the coolest.
I saw a topless woman be fed peas in a play.
What?
It was a good time. We talked about it on this podcast actually a long
yeah, I
time
do
ago
remember
about
that.
immersive theater and whatnot.
And Arkham Knight was pretty cool as well.
Yeah, that game looked all right. Yeah, for sure. I always have a good time with each and every one of you. I think of going to Finland with Ben Reeves for the Quantum Break trip because then we had a free day.
That's right.
And we went out and saw this Fortress Island, which had a bunch of cannons. I got a tour from an awesome lady who talked all about why Russia is secretly evil.
A guy on a parasail just fascinated us for like an hour.
Flew by us and kept screaming at us in Finnish, and we just applauded and smiled. And then we went to a Finnish amusement park and rode some crazy rides. Remember that one that went upside down?
Yep. That's called a roller coaster.
Oh, that's right. And then we went to a Finnish hip-hop show all in one day. Like one of the best days of my life.
Yeah.
The entire time, Ben Reeves cracking me up, best buds.
Yeah.
So
was
you're
so much
saying
fun.
when we
Then
send
you
you
didn't
guys
talk to
out,
me on the plane.
you guys aren't doing work. You're just.
Oh, no. I
Well,
made all that
amusement
stuff
parks.
about Quantum Break.
Yeah, that's
shows.
basically it.
Yeah, that's why the Quantum Break cover story was largely about why roller coasters are neat and why Finnish sounds funny. Let's see. Also, a good moment, Reeves, was on the Transformers Fall of Cybertron cover when all the power went out in the entire city.
I forgot about that.
And
So
we were
had-
just like, we don't know what we're going to do.
we had plans to go to dinner that night, but we couldn't because the power was out.
Yeah, it was
And
a-
so
it was
we
a
went over
mess.
to like the producer's house, and he had an awesome house actually, and like he grilled for us in his backyard.
That was a very bizarre
Remember
situation.
Ubisoft Montreal when the fire alarm went off?
In the middle of the Rainbow Six Patriots demo.
And everyone in that office, and there's like, you've seen the credits of a Ubisoft game, you know that there are like a few people work in those offices.
Yeah.
And it was just like for blocks and blocks, just this mass of people.
I love it because I have this visual representation of now what it's like to see an entire city street filled with every Ubisoft employee from Ubisoft Montreal. It's just nuts. Reiner, we had a bang bang where we ate a bunch of food on that Uncharted 4 cover
did,
story trip.
yeah.
What was your favorite story, Reiner? Spill it.
I've been thinking about that, and I would say it's almost like going to each development studio, and there's always like one piece of memorabilia that's just kind of blows your mind.
that
Like
you see in the studio?
Yeah, we went to when we were at id Software. They had framed the original artwork, the original sketch for the first cover. From the game.
Oh my
just
God.
in a frame, just sitting out in the middle of nowhere, like just in this kind of dead sector of the office. There was nobody sitting. I was just like,
Wait, the one that's
that
in your
should
office
be in a
now?
museum.
Yeah.
That thing is awesome.
That's
and then
so cool.
Naughty Dog, going to Naughty Dog, and they had like the one Way of the Warrior arcade unit that was ever created. You know, stuff like that is
I didn't even
super
notice
cool.
that.
Every time you go to a studio, they have something from their past, if
Yep.
they do have history.
It's more recent past, but I love it. Bungie, they have on their wall framed a Declaration of Independence signed by all the founders of Bungie from when they broke free of Microsoft. It's like, that is just a cool
That is
relic.
Stuff's
to have.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Let's see. We got Dominic from Lisle, Illinois, and the Overblood Facebook group, which is a physical place now these days. He says, I'm curious, since this is the year of VR and all, what do you think of what's about to come out with Steven Spielberg's adaptation of Ready Player One? Are you excited for the movie? Reiner leans back. I haven't read the book. I'm a Spielberg fan. I'll be excited to see how he tackles the video game world and whatnot.
I like the book a fair amount. If you haven't read the book, go read the book. And it's weird because I'm not sure that I am excited because the book was fun, but like I almost don't need a movie out of it.
It's
for
also
one.
the bummer is that Spielberg's taking all of the Spielberg references out
and those
of it.
are some of the best like references because he made a lot of awesome movies back then.
Talk about modesty. Can you imagine that?
It's weird. It seems
Yeah.
like you attach yourself just so you do all that right then.
Right.
'Cause you can give it more insight than anyone else. But
It's a good representation or a good just like example of where his mind is at. Where he's like, I don't want to talk about myself.
Well, the
at
book
all.
is really fun, but it's kind of like that Conan bit. Remember this?
Remember that?
Remember that? Where it's just like, okay, I get it. The 80s, Gremlins,
Yeah.
Back to the Future. So I'm wondering, like, as a movie, I don't know how well that will work. But
Yeah.
I think Scott Pilgrim made a weird transition to movies and was successful. So, I mean, it's certainly possible to have things like that work.
Wild prediction: this movie will not be as good as Scott Pilgrim, but I'm still excited to see where they go with it. Nathan writes in and says, "As I grow older, 28, I'm finding myself with less and less time to game, and that's what he calls it, to game. Well, it's obvious that more adult responsibilities come less. Well, it's obvious that more adult responsibilities come less time to game." And right. Do any of you ever feel guilty playing games?
You should feel guilty for what you just did there.
I love you, Nathan. Do you ever
Yeah.
feel guilty for playing games?
I think Jeff Cork and I probably do whenever our kids are awake and we're playing games.
Yeah, it's rough.
It's tough.
Because especially when it's like I'm playing something that is like wildly inappropriate, so it's kind of like,
And
don't
those-
go
that's all
down
you
the stairs.
Don't go no.
Do you have to explain that ahead of time?
Oh yeah, I'll be like, I'm gonna be playing something that is super yucky, so just steer clear.
Did they ever ask you like, hey Dad, why do you play those games then if they're not appropriate?
Don't get any ideas either. You don't
Yeah.
talk to my kids.
And it's like Kelly, my wife, will give me time, you know, like, hey, you could go play games, but then it'll be like Evie will just be kind of roaming around. It's like, Well,
Yeah.
I should be playing with her, rather than doing this.
Or the worst is like when you can hear them in the house, like being little jerks to mom, and mom is just like losing her patience, and I'm like, I have to finish this before I can come up.
Yeah,
with
I gotta
this.
get
It's
a
like for work.
checkpoint.
Yeah. I'm having fun.
I don't really feel guilty playing games. I always feel guilty watching too much TV. Cork, I know you watch a lot of TV, but it always just feels like, God, this is gross. This is so much time just sitting on this couch. But there's an interesting conversation the other day where Brian Shea, resident GI weirdo, walked back into the back bullpen, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I play Overwatch all the time, but like, what's the point? I'm just kind of wasting time with multiplayer games. Like, what's the end goal there? And I think of this specifically because I've been playing a lot of Overwatch and continue to love it. But it's like, well, take a lot of time in it, and you just have fun. That's the end goal, everybody. You don't need to feel guilty if you're having fun.
There you go.
Keep doing it. Especially,
Hey.
like, it helps when it's social, too. Like, when
Brian
you're
Shea,
playing with
if
your
you're
friends.
listening,
Yeah. Go on. Speak your mind.
they're fun. It's video games.
Jake,
How many of you have two screens set up though, so you can play a game and then watch something at the same time?
Oh, man, I don't.
I
I'm
did-
usually podcasting.
Yeah, I
but-
did that in college. Yeah, I'd have like a laptop put up so I could watch something.
You
while
got
I
to
was-
do that. You can consume so much more stuff that way.
Oh,
I mean,
podcast.
it's not like a big show you really want to focus on. You're not going to do that with.
Okay.
But if there's just stuff on the side, like someone said this is good, and you kind of start watching, you're like, it's okay, but play a game and have that on.
like
in the
Game of
corner.
Thrones or something.
Mr. Robot.
Kind of like
Now that you
popcorn.
mention that, I feel like I should have a monitor in every room in my house just playing like House Hunters or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that
Just
kind of
constantly
stuff's
be entertained by
perfect
that. Yeah, the best show. Let's see. Andy, Pixel Prime on Twitter. He writes in from England. He says, "What games in recent memory have had moments that frustrate you enough to want to throw your controller across the room? Even the most well-polished games can have convoluted or contrived portions of gameplay. Which ones over the last year have had you gnawing your knuckles in anguish?"
almost every session of Clash Royale I play, I could feel it like the scenario plays in my mind, and I feel like I take my phone and I turn it sideways and I hold it like this and I throw it at the wall as hard as I can, like a throwing star.
Like Genji, yeah.
And I could see it shattering against the wall. And then I look around my room and I'm like, well, that will dent the wall and I'll be forever ashamed whenever I see that dent. And then I'll look around, maybe if I throw it at the floor. Maybe if I wonder if I'm strong enough to crack it or at least break the glass or throw it at a window.
Are you
or-
strong enough to just delete this app from your phone forever?
No, because then I play one more round and I win, and then I'm like, okay, fine, whatever.
It's gross. You play a lot, so this
Yeah, we
just must
do.
be a constant rage bubble in your head.
Yeah.
So I'll say this: out of the Game Informer staffers, Jeff, myself, Dan Tack, Andy McNamara, Brian Shea, and Jeff Marchiafava are all. We play this daily. Like we think this game is just fantastic.
Clash Royale, yeah.
But I mean, there will be scenarios like the ones Jeff is describing. It's like, okay, I have victory in sights. That castle or that tower has like 300 left, and then they roll over you and just take down everything, all your towers and your base, and it just feels awful.
And then they send a little like crying king emote, which it's just a picture, and I've seen it so many times, and I've sent it more times. But when it's thrown at me, it doesn't feel good.
Oh no!
And it makes again, I just
Wait,
see
so
the
you-
phone,
And they
turn
do it over and over and
You're
over.
one of the jerks that actually does that. Then huh?
occasionally.
Yeah, I do the hard pounding to get through the menu.
Oh my gosh,
Jesus.
you guys are the worst
Just
people.
It gets me so worked up.
Everybody that I hear that plays a lot of Clash Royale just hates themselves for doing it. Do
You
you,
should
guys
play it, man. You should play it.
It's one of
I kinda wanna
it's one of
start.
my favorite games of the year, like hands down. But I guess I get so into it and I want to win so badly because there's such big, stakes on the line of your trophies every time. That you really do, man. You just lose it.
Yeah.
You could get so upset.
For me, it's much less so. But I always think of the Lego games for recent games that make me really frustrated. And I loved it because Matt Cotto came back and was talking to Jeff Cork recently also about just like, what the hell's up with these puzzles in Lego games? What is happening there? How is this forgivable? Which has been my crusade for a long time, is that those games can be so frustrating.
Yeah.
With sober adults not being able to figure out, what do you want me to do here, TT? Just shatter more crap and then something might pop out that brings it forward?
That's generally it.
okay.
One last thing: if you're playing Clash Royale
sure.
out there, this camera.
Yeah.
And you have over 3,000 trophies, and you want to be a part of a really cool clan, we have one for you. Hit me up, Reiner at GameInformer.com.
All right.
Our clan's full. You're gonna have to like kick people out.
Oh, yeah, we
Exactly.
will. See you, Ben.
No.
Luke Chambers writes in. He says, "Hey podcasters, I hope Kim or Jeff are on this week because I've got a bone to pick with them. No.
Jeff 'em?
Because Jeff Cork. Because I'm responding to their feature that they wrote for the website called Romance in Games. Have you considered Shovel Knight? I think it is the best example I've ever seen of a romantic game. The intermittent dream sequences and final boss fight bring the romance theme poignantly to the forefront. I've seldom played a more complex game with half so moving a finale.
I have played it for like 15 minutes when Tim was playing it for a review.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that. Tim did not tell me about that.
Wait, so you never played the game?
No.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh, you should go play it. It's a great game.
Yeah, I've also played maybe like half an hour or so,
Yeah,
and I guess I
I
don't
liked
remember that. It feels just kind of like a Super Meat Boy thing, where it's like, oh, you get to see a bandage girl every
All
once
right,
in a
I'll
while.
go check it out.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as moving as they're describing. It's fun. I actually like the game a lot.
It's the
I don't know
best.
if it's like the best. Like we talk about Uncharted 4 as a really good example of.
Stay tuned. We'll
romantic
talk a lot
games.
about marriage coming
By
up.
the
Then
everybody.
maybe I'm just looking for an excuse to play this game.
Give it to him, man.
There you go.
And then because
It's
it's
a good
the
game, though.
bloodiest thing imaginable.
Yeah, it's yucky.
It's too romantic for yucky
Don't
little
come
boys
down.
to
Go bug
see.
your mother.
Brock Randolph writes in and says, I'm a big WWE fan, but I do not buy their annual video game releases. Every year I give it a try, read the reviews, and hope that they will fix a lot of the nagging issues that plague the series, but it never seems to happen. My question is, why doesn't 2K make a WWE game for today similar to the wrestling games of old, like WWE No Mercy? It's a good question.
Yeah, here. They should.
They should at least, and I feel like the audience would lose its mind if they just made like a throwback game that still was a little bit janky in those old games, but just literally take that format from the N64 wrestling games that everybody seems to love and just make this crazy homage to that specifically. It doesn't have to be WWE 2K18 or something. Just make a little downloadable offshoot and give those fans what they want.
Yeah, if you poll all wrestling fans who play games and say, what's the best wrestling game ever made? Mm-hmm. And most of them say this one from yesteryear, you're doing something wrong if they're not picking your games from like the last 5 years.
Yeah,
Like,
you're not making people 12 years old again. That's what they're doing wrong.
well, I mean, there was something there. There was a magic there that they obviously haven't had. And the games have scored poorly lately.
Yeah?
So I would say they're going the wrong way. Try something new. Shake it up.
Get rid of last gen games, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
get rid
that
of last
holding them
gen.
back?
That's one thing.
I think
Go
they're on the
forward.
yearly cycle, which probably doesn't help them at all. And there's the licensing. I don't know how that licensing works.
Well, that's the
but-
thing. Just license it out to some smaller
Yeah,
studio.
do it
Give
to
it to some
different
indie studio. Give it to the Gang Beast guys, and let them develop some crazy No Mercy. You know, what is the other one that people love? Wrestling Revolution. What is it?
No,
I forget.
It's another one on
The
N64.
WrestleMania
Yeah.
for N64. Just make it a crazy homage to that. That's all they gotta do. Make everybody happy, and then you can have your crazy high end. Hey, look at the hair on this guy's butt or whatever they're showing
Yeah.
off in the new WWE. Right, Jeff Cork?
You know it, baby.
Great. I think that's it. What emails sent out to you guys?
The Jeff Cork email, naturally.
Oh, that.
See, if we give it to the Jeff Cork email, which I like, but Kyle here, if we give it to him, then people are just going to write in flattering
Yeah.
emails saying that's the ticket.
It's going to be great. We'll feel so good about ourselves.
No, we can't do that.
The one we
No.
spent the most time on was the cover story one, right?
You're right.
Cover story
Yeah.
one was good. That's the only one I remember.
All right.
I like the let's
It's
back
more
up a
about
question.
us, but
I like the question about how we determine what we do for rumors and all that stuff. I think
That
was
is
an
true.
interesting
That really
Yeah,
cuts
that's a
to the
good one.
core of it. I didn't
That's a
even
good
think
one.
of the E3 emails, but you're absolutely right. Chad from Chicago, he should absolutely get email of the week. So
There
Chad
you
from
go.
Chicago, we'll send you out something real nice. We'll have a little note in there that'll spoil some surprises coming up at E3. So it'll be everything you want there, Chad. All right. Congratulations to Chad, and thank you to everybody for writing into Podcast at Game Informer. Keep feedback and thoughts and questions coming over there. Otherwise, if you finished Uncharted 4, you can stick around. And by the way, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I haven't listened to the audio yet, but if you can hear me shuffling a lot of papers during this in the audio version, I'd like to apologize because I'm trying to manage 16 different pages of notes to get through this Uncharted 4 Game Club. But it's a good chat. We got a good crew coming back for it, so stay tuned for that. Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Informer's Game Club. We are talking about the second half of Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. So at this point, if you have not finished the game, you should turn this off. Or if you just don't think you'll care about a lot of story spoilers, then keep listening. But we have a trimmed down crew from last time. What is with our game clubs, Joe and Ben Reeves? Why do people trickle out every single time?
I just think people don't have the commitment that captains of gaming like Ben and I guand I guess you to some degree.
To some
also
degree.
have.
I think
I think Joe smells.
We got Jeff Markiafava also here.
Hey.
Hero of the people. And joining the game club for the first time ever, my spiritual partner,
Yeah.
Jeff Cork.
Well, I just watched the first episode of this game club.
Yeah.
So I can offer a lot of suggestions as to why people stopped attending. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, so you actually caught up. You watched that. I put a gun to your head just so you knew what we'd already talked about, what we hadn't. What did you think? Maybe that's a good place to start.
Oh, boy.
Going back and watching that after having finished the game, what stood out the most from our first conversation?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I just listened to it because I
Okay.
downloaded the YouTube video and played it in my car.
You know it's a podcast as well, right?
Eh.
Okay. In that case, you'd have to subscribe to the GI
technology.
Show. And
It's all very complicated stuff.
So download. Okay, anyways,
Downloading YouTube, that's simple.
But what did you think? Did you have thoughts? What stood out?
It was an interesting discussion. Yeah.
Were we way off base? Because I went back and watched the ending again to try and get a sense of where we thought this.
Oh,
whole
you were
thing was
like, oh,
heading.
this Sam, he's not a bad guy. I'm really interested in that. And his prison escape. What a dynamic sequence that was. That's exactly how it happened.
Maybe that's a good place to start. We got an email from Paul Arias who writes in, when I watched your game club, I had to laugh a bit because I'd already finished the game a week after release. Sam lied, you guys. Sam lied.
Well, no shit. If you finish the game, you know the ending. Good job. Real prescient of you there, sir.
But it's interesting. We talked about like, oh, Sam's turning bad. It's going to be terrible. I was saying there might be like a Metal Gear Solid 3 moment where you have to put your brother down, slowly inject a needle behind the ear.
Yeah.
And it's interesting also to talk about how and I think a couple people were with me a little bit talking about like that prison escape set up with the drug lord. Like that did it for me the least. It was so silly to me.
It didn't feel realistic. It felt like completely out of character for everybody involved. Like you were saying in the first episode, which I listened to in my car after downloading it on YouTube. Sure. It's just like, why is this like rich drug lord super into this treasure? It doesn't make any sense. And then the way that he was like kicked you out of the car was like, I'll be in touch. And then just
Yeah.
you're like, this is an absurd setup. And
It's
then
like
you
the
realize,
writers pulled it out of thin air and it did not make any sense and did not fit within the coherence of this story.
It would have been fun, maybe if you're a weirdo like I am. I think you'll be on board with this. If
I'm a weirdo.
you could have been like asked a bunch of those questions as Drake, and then replayed that sequence as it just falls apart logically, and you're like, wait a second, you're kind of like a Call of Juarez,
right, gunslinger
swinger style.
situation.
Like, this doesn't make any sense. So one guy came, and then he blew up all these guys, and.
One thing about that I liked, like we had sort of talked about in the last discussion about how we thought that like I think we were all at various places on the spectrum. No one was taking Sam at face value. Everyone sort of
Right.
expected some sort of like twist there. And I was maybe a little more on the end of like, I thought things were going to get a little more sinister with him than they did.
Absolutely.
And after I finished it, I ended up like, I was really thankful they didn't for a lot of reasons. I think one of them was like, I like the fact that Naughty Dog stuck to its guns to like tell the kind of story that
Fits the Uncharted universe?
Yeah, but I guess more than that, I guess, is like they're willing to defy the expectation that things get dark. You know, the fact, because I think that with a setup like this, with like two brothers sort of growing up in different ways, essentially, like I think that there's a kind of narrative convention to generate a sort of easy out to generate drama is just to really put those two characters at odds at some point.
You left me to die.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
exactly. It's really interesting. I don't know if you guys went back and watched the first trailer, which was just kind of like a camera going over the maps and whatnot. But on the Uncharted 4 cover story trip, I asked Neil Druckmann about that trailer specifically, and he pointed out like that trailer isn't canon anymore. And it's interesting to go back and listen to it now because it is a different actor, but it is Sam Drake's character being like, you left me rotting in that prison for 15 years.
Yeah.
You owe me. It's very sinister. Clearly, like, this is the big bad for the game, is the brother figure. And it's also interesting to see interviews with the Naughty Dog developers now talking about how they were happy to kind of tease that expectation about things going dark. And I think people coming off of Last of Us specifically were expecting things to get dark. So when this game ends up like Sam's kind of shady, but ultimately he's on your side. He's a good guy. No one dies except for Rafe getting treasure dropped on his head. Thumbs up, this is Uncharted, rock on. Dun, 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 dun.
And that's and I think like that is what I like so much about it, is that not just like, oh, we're not going to go dark, but actually in avoiding that sort of confrontation, like good versus evil kind of thing with the two brothers, they ended up telling a story that felt a lot more believable and natural and interesting than if they had sort of manufactured that that rivalry there or whatever.
Yeah. Going off that, Rick from Southampton, Massachusetts wrote in. He says, I couldn't believe Elena, by the way, we're jumping right to the end here, but we can go back in time. There's a lot to cover in this second half. But Rick from Massachusetts writes in, he says, I couldn't believe Elena was casually talking to Sam on the dock. This was the jerk that lied to her husband and almost got everybody killed. That was not believable, in my opinion. The last chapter with the daughter was okay, but is obviously a device to reminisce about the Uncharted franchise. Overall, I liked it, but it kind of fizzled out at the end for me. Did that strike you as weird, the Elena-Sam chat?
That didn't, but I felt like Elena let Nathan off the hook too easily throughout, kind of like once they get back together and Nathan's kind of just acting like, oh, I'm in the doghouse, I'm sorry.
Right.
There were a couple, I think, really meaningful conversations with him when he's kind of reflecting, and they also kind of tie it into when they're finding the pirates and all the betrayal and stuff. And I think he comes to some realizations during that, but it seemed like Elena got over it really quickly.
I didn't like when she pops up too. I was certain that he was going to have like a conversation, and then it would cut back, and it was like he was talking to like a mop that had washed ashore or something like that. Because like it just seemed like
love
her
to this
presence
mop.
there seemed so absurd in that moment.
Yeah,
Like, how did
because
that even happen?
He just like conked his head after like falling off a cliff. You know, it was like a Homer Simpson.
Yeah, there's going to be like a Wilson from Castaway moment where it's,
And
Also, I thought it was a weird place to cut. I feel like it would have been much more dramatic if he just would have fallen off that cliff after the whole Sam blew out and the big Sam reveal. By the way, I should point out, Sam was working with Rafe the whole time. That's what we've been kind of talking around.
Yeah.
But after he fell off, I thought they should just cut back to the past then, because then it goes back to them breaking into the house. Much cooler, but like to kind of just show you like, oh no, he's fine and Elena's there. It was a weird structure.
Like I liked the sequence, but it did feel like it was a little out of place. Like she comes across Drake, starts like swabbing at his head, and then he just immediately launches into the story. Okay, here's the deal. One time, my brother and I, we played hooky from school, and we broke into this house, and I put this helmet on.
That didn't bug me so much.
I think you're meant to fill in some blanks there in terms of how they got to telling that story and things like that. I don't know if the idea is like, oh, I woke up, okay, let me tell you something, honey.
And it's nice that it just picks up on the very end after that chapter. So the idea is that they were slowly being walked through
It
that.
more just felt convenient that she was there more than anything else. That she suddenly showed up, like you were talking about.
It's very silly. A lot of people wrote in like that's a real stretch, but I guess we'll go along.
But
with it.
that's the entire series too, right? Like you're always exploring something that no one has ever been to, except for the giant platoon of guys that you're going to fight, and every other main character in the story is going to pop up at that.
They all solve the pirate puzzles to get there to
they all
prove their
figure it
worth
out
to Henry
together.
Avery.
Yeah, they're always exactly 20 seconds behind you, and they burst into the doors. And
Right.
we'll take it from here, Drake.
Or they somehow find ways to get where you are without having to go through all the puzzles and crap.
Yeah,
Well, they're following you. You did it all for them.
Well, no, but in some cases, I don't remember if this was first half or second half. Like when they're in that room with the thing on the pedestal in the center or something, and like it's like, Sam and Nate have to go through this whole rigmarole to get there, and then all of a sudden it's just like, boom, explosions. All right, they're right there. They just like come through the wall or something.
Yeah, and like 75% of the time you completely destroy whatever you're going through, and yet still they somehow
And of course,
get past there.
this
too.
is us sort of splitting hairs over details of like a series that is sort of just blatantly like, don't think about it too much and just have fun.
Well,
So-
Charles writes in on that topic, actually, about thinking about this game too much. He has an interesting theory. He says, hey, GI crew, let me start by just gushing about how much I love this final installment in the series. It stands out to me as one of the most authentic marriage relationships portrayed in a video game. I agree.
Yep.
The only detraction from its glory was that returning feeling that it sometimes pushes the extreme situations beyond my ability to suspend my disbelief. Then it hit me. Nathan Drake exists in the same universe as Jet Li's The One. Each loading screen was not resetting the timeline, but rather moving me over to the next multiverse where my new Drake had absorbed that life energy. Granted, I'm sure that I went through more than 124 Drakes, but by the end of the game, I'd achieved an almost godlike status as the last remaining Drake. Suspension of disbelief reestablished.
Also, the last remaining fan of The One.
Actually, no, I am a big fan of that movie.
I've never seen that one, but I remember the premise.
It
about
is so cool.
There's only 120 dimensions then? in
Yeah,
that
there's like
universe?
a finite number of parallel universes, and what this is, we can have the one discussion club. at
Yeah,
another
let's really
point.
dig into this.
But-
we should start out just on. Please.
Before we do, I wanted to issue an official retraction from
please.
something that I said in the last episode.
Is it the butt joke about
Where-
what a thieves' end is? Because I appreciate you retracting that. Yeah.
I accept your apology.
It's
Thank
so we had someone write in talk about how, just on the subject of suspension of disbelief, how bothered they were by the fact that like whenever you need to get somewhere, there's just like, oh, there's a crate or something like really convenient nearby. And last discussion, I sort of used the excuse like, don't think about it too much. It's Uncharted. It never really bothered me. In the second half of the game, there were some super conspicuous crates
Yeah, it
that
comes up a lot
really
more in the
started to
second
bother
half.
me. in
Yeah.
this.
It's absurd.
Yeah, especially if like, and it's one thing. I think it wouldn't bother me so much if they altered them somehow. Or
It's always
like,
a crate on wheels.
yeah, it's like casters on this crate that's been here since like the 1800s.
Oh, the
That's like-
pirate's crate, the
Yeah.
legendary
Yeah.
loot.
That
Yeah.
was like Libertalia's main export was caster wheels.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So like that to me, it's not so much the repetition of like, yeah, because like in The Last of Us, that was the problem of like, oh, you need to get anywhere, you just like pull this thing here and jump up and
Yeah.
the repetition of it. And this, it wasn't the repetition of the action so much. It's just like create some different objects that serve the same purpose. But why is it always a crate on casters?
It's
That
really
bothered me.
absurd. And like
It's all
I
the
saw,
pirate roadies.
Yeah.
They need to get their equipment.
I saw an interview with Neil Druckmann where he was talking about it, and he's like, well, we just need those characters to bond, and we need you to interact in a gameplay sense with people. But it just ends up, it's one of my main downsides too. With The Last of Us, I'm totally with you, but this as well. It just feels like Army of Two moments sprinkled in otherwise what I think is a really, really brilliant game, and then just, help me hold this door because it'll create some emotional attachment. It's like, just have some good dialogue.
I don't know what
and
I
that's
think did
enough.
though. Yeah, I don't
What
know
I think that
bugged
they do is smart though is that a lot of times where you push a crate over and you help a friend up and then they will go away for a little bit, and you're kind of watching them interact. So it's not just a matter of like, hey, give them a boost and then they lower their arm down and then pull you up. So I mean,
Right.
it seems like a little more engaging than that. I mean, after a while you'll notice this happens an awful lot though.
There was a couple scenes where it's like Elena like grabs you and you're like, I feel like it's gonna rip her arm off. Like,
Oh, you didn't see that?
yeah, I missed that scene.
Yeah, it's
Is
terrible.
that DLC?
In the second half, I thought there were more conspicuous moments of like, hey, let me try and get something to help you up. And it's like, you have a rope. You have that rope on your belt.
Especially the biggest moment is when it ties into the story. When Nate's like, I'm going after Sam. We got to go after Sam after he's like committed to go. Basically, the Last Crusade moment of like, I can reach it. I can reach it to go get the treasure. And then he's just up on this little wall. And Sully and Elaine are like, well, there's no way for us to get over this.
Yeah.
Look around, there's like 30 barrels. You can climb on anything. He has a rope. Just lower it right there.
And I looked at that cart that fell down. It just lost one wheel. Yeah. It's like you guys could move a whatever.
Just grab some of those caster wheels and
Nothing we can do, kiddo. That's a terrible Sully.
get
Rest
us
my
going.
mind.
Oh, that's what that was? Yikes.
Emmett from Massachusetts writes about that moment specifically saying, this is his favorite moment. For me, the best moment, without a doubt, is after Sam runs off to get the treasure before Rafe does, and Nate chases after him. The awesome sense of finality and epic tension as Chapter 21, Brother's Keeper, scrawled across the screen, and the music became low and ominous gave me chills. My heart was beating loudly as I played through probably the best platforming section of the game towards what I could tell was the end of my favorite series in all of gaming.
That one's cool too because it's one of the few times he's alone.
Yeah.
And he's talking to himself and he refers to like a crazy guy talking to himself or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to be by yourself a little bit. I think there's a little bit too much talking to himself. People always talk about how he's nuts for killing all these people, but I think he'd also be legally insane for how much he comments on himself, including one comment where he goes, this is harder than it looks. Where it's like, who are you talking to? Talk about like breaking the fourth wall. Like, what the hell are you talking? Talking to a bird? Like, so stupid.
I did like there was some line where he's like, did you come this way? Probably not.
Yeah.
I also like there's that like, I don't know what they call it, the pickaxe or something. It's like a pick he gets at some
Pecan,
point.
I think it's called,
Yeah, the
something like that.
pecans he get to use in his climbing. And I liked diving off a wall and digging that thing into the like rock face and like you create a huge gash.
I think you just
slid
like
down.
Rise of the Tomb Raider.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it is
That's
very
what I
much-
was playing.
But I'm totally with you. They showed that in that PSX demo years ago, and it stood out to me so much. It's like when he slams that little pecan in, and then it like creates that groove. And there's a couple cool moments with that. And then like when they eventually stack all the mechanics up on top of each other, where you're like sliding and then swinging to like a pecan stab. I think
And
that's
then use the rope or whatever. Yeah.
right. But on your point, Joe, about things being more conspicuous and annoying, I think the more casually you use that rope, the stronger it is. When it's like, oh, there's a battle and there's like a little place you can swing and might get a good punch out of it or something.
Yeah.
But it really stood out to me in the second half as well, specifically that dumb waterfall moment in the Jeep when Elena and Nate are getting close to the waterfall. And it's like, don't worry, Nate's going to go over this waterfall. But there is a certain dangling branch that you can use the rope on just over it perfectly. And it's like, what? Who installed that there? It's just the gaminess kind of catches up with this game every once in a while.
Yeah, I guess in that one I would go back to my don't think about it too much.
Yeah, just have fun.
excuse.
Just have fun, everybody. I think that was my big takeaway from this game in general, is it's so smart with the writing and dialogue and the performances. And I feel like that pillar is kind of overshadowing gameplay mechanics in a way. So it's a strange feeling, and I've never really felt it in a game before, but because the dialogue and they want to keep it so honest, because that sentiment is so strong, that the characters find themselves commenting on the gameplay so much that it almost feels like it's mocking the gameplay. Like there's so many comments about like, oh my god, this is what you do all the time. Oh great, here's some more jumping. Oh great, here we got to push another thing. Like they need to keep that honesty going, so they have to comment on the gameplay, but it just kind of drives home the fact that games are still not realistic and a little bit silly at times.
I mean, are there any games that do that well though, or is it just that there's
just
few games that have a story of this caliber?
I think a game
and so you don't notice it in other games.
Yeah, I think a game as ambitious as this, there's still going to be that repetition. And to have that level of repetition and also these honest portrayals, you need to comment on the repetition a fair amount.
Yeah.
And it's this interesting dynamic that I've never really seen in a game before. Jeff, what stood out to you in the second half?
I actually like the combat more in the second half. I think there were some sequences where I didn't mind it as much. You still have the ones where basically anytime you come into a big area where there are just a ton of guys patrolling, I was still like, oh god, I gotta try and sneak through all this, and eventually they're gonna see me and more guys are gonna come in. But then there were a couple sequences where I guess I can't remember specifically, but you're like getting chased out of somewhere and the gunplay is fast enough that like one of the giant armored cars comes back again, and I actually thought that was a lot of fun. And
But something we didn't point out last time is that you're playing on super baby light gun mode.
Well, it was the second easiest difficulty mode, but then it gives you the option to turn on like the auto aim or whatever.
Yeah.
And at first when I saw
I did that also. That's exactly how
interesting.
I'm playing. Yeah.
when I first saw that, I was like, I don't need it that easy. You know, I just don't want to have to shoot a guy 100 times before he dies.
Yeah.
But then after, like 2 hours, I turned it on and just never looked back. It is so much better. And I think it fits with the vibe of the story and kind of, the tone of like, you're basically supposed to be Indiana Jones or whatever.
Right.
Like Nathan Drake should be able to just like instantly aim and shoot a bunch of guys as you're running through these environments.
Just mow dudes down.
Yeah,
just
that was
like
exactly
Indiana
my
Jones.
rationale for it too. Is like I'm playing, and we talked about this before, but like I play Uncharted largely as a more cinematic experience. So it's like I like the idea of just like popping up from cover, shoot, getting down, taking care of guys. I don't like the like, oh, I missed. Oh, let's line up a headshot. All right.
If I wasn't capturing the footage for the YouTube version of this that you can see on the side of the screen, I would have done that too, but I didn't want the internet to mock me and say, you don't even play Uncharted right.
There was one sequence like all the crashed pirate ship area. Remember that sequence?
Yes,
I thought that action sequence went on a little bit too long.
Even though the music was amazing.
Yeah,
during
and I
that
loved
segment.
the area. It looked cool.
Yeah, I'm
but-
totally with you. That was just that gunfight. I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore.
At the end of every gunfight, it was just I got a sense that I was relieved that was done.
Yeah.
So then I could move on to the next exciting sequence where you're moving around. I think the platforming
Yeah,
is really
platforming
strong.
is good.
you
Could've
never
done
got
that
sick
for
of
a
the
long time.
platforming? There's
I
never...
mean, there are moments where okay, I feel like I've done this before, but I think it was. I did more like the combat felt more repetitious than the platforming, where it was just like, oh, look, it's that asshole with the shotgun.
Yeah.
Take his legs out.
And part of the platforming is like, for me, part of the fun isn't the actual, like part of what keeps the platforming fresh isn't the fact that what you're doing like jumping to this ledge or swinging on this thing. It's the reward after the platforming, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not the act of jumping around and stuff that's fun. It's the act of like gonna get up there and then like see what's up there, what's in that cave.
Yeah.
That sort of like sense of the area unfolding is what makes that fun.
Yeah, as I was playing through this game, I kept thinking about like what's propelling me forward. It's like I want those cutscenes. The platforming, I think, is it's fine to me, but it's not like, yeah, this is Uncharted, baby. The gunplay I'm not really into. And I always thought back to like this quote that Tim Schafer had where he was talking about like what the motivation was in old adventure games, where it's like you don't have the RPG sense of progression really. And he's like, yeah, after thinking about it a lot, it turns out the reward in those old games is just seeing new environments. And he realized like it's basically the same with this modern action adventure game. Like I just want to see new environments, seeing like Libertalia for the first time, and getting to walk around that abandoned town. I thought was super cool.
Yeah, the moment where you sit down and have a drink, like a pretend drink with your brother.
Yeah, that was great.
You have like an extended conversation.
I think I missed that. Is that
Was this optional?
Yeah, there's just like a chair and you hit triangle, and then you and your brother sit down and like clink glasses and just
Pretend there's
have this
ale in 'em and
beautiful
you-
view.
Yeah.
and,
Oh,
like,
that sounds great.
You just talk.
pretty good.
It's cool. Yeah.
Dang it. Let's see. Ryan Kavanaugh writes in about one of his interesting notes on the gameplay. He says, after clearing the area filled with broken ships in Chapter 20, No Escape, a shoreline truck chases Nate. Did you notice the similarities between this sequence and the Crash Bandicoot level you play in Chapter 4? Nate thinks running towards the camera, leaping over waist-high fences, yada, yada, yada. Clink. But I noticed there's also a moment with Elena where you're running towards the camera as well. And I was like waiting for them to make some reference like, remember when we were playing on the couch? This is just like that.
I should have packed my jean shorts.
I can still beat your high score.
Okay, this is on a slightly different subject.
Yeah.
Is that all right? I wanted to. So I was digging around for some like Easter eggs and stuff that I might have missed. Did you guys know that like Elena's like her license plate on her truck is basically like
NRA forever?
no. It's like Elena, except sort of flipped upside down in Elite speak. So it's like 373.
The car
You know
she
what?
steals.
This is the
basically?
Yeah.
rental car?
Yeah, the Jeep that she has like is basically her name is flipped upside down is the license plate.
Oh,
which,
interesting.
which is
What a-
kind of cool.
What a cool thing, Elena.
And then another little Easter egg that I loved was like when you first. This is like right when we start, like right at Chapter 11, right where we set our cutoff point. It's like there's like a little like immigration office or something that you go to where there's a big long line and they're talking about like, oh, this looks terrible. And then there's some reference to like, oh, it's nothing like Arstotzka. It's like, oh yeah, don't remind me. Arstotzka is the fake country in Papers, Please.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
I missed
So,
that.
so there's
pretty
this,
good.
yeah. So basically, it's like this passport or immigration office or something that they're referencing, being like, "This looks bad," but it's not like this other place we were.
Yeah.
Which scene was that? I don't remember that.
It was like right when you come in. I think it's
is
right
chapter
at the
11.
beginning of Chapter 11. Like when there's the town with like all of the. You're going to that like church or something in the distance, and there's all those sort of like little shops and stalls and stuff. It's just sort of like off to the side. There's just like it's just like a room you can go into. There's not
Yeah.
really much that happens.
Something Sully says. Maybe?
Yeah, I know Neil and
Yeah.
Bruce are big fans of Lucas Pope and Papers, Please and whatnot. My favorite Easter egg, well, there's a couple actually, but I appreciated, I think it's when Sam and Nathan are running around together again, and there's some reference like, oh, watch out for that first step. I'm like, let me guess, it's a doozy. Little Groundhog Day reference.
Yeah, I like the fact that
Everybody
he
in
saw
there.
Groundhog Day while he was in prison.
Yeah, I wish that instead of Crash or in prison, I see. Yeah, they maybe just had it on the. It was just looping
It's
constantly.
like movie night. Because he's a drug lord, they wheel in the AV cart. Hey,
every
by the
night.
way, you kept referring to the Crash Bandicoot sequence as being an Easter egg.
It's not.
It's absolutely not an Easter egg.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry if I called it an Easter egg.
Several
How
times.
dare
I'm
you.
so upset.
Because Easter eggs have to be hidden and optional, and
Yeah, I drove my car off the road. I
they
was so
don't
mad.
shove Easter eggs at you twice in a game.
It doesn't work in
specifically.
real
Wait,
life,
how
as
did
it
you
turns
listen to
out.
the last podcast, Cork?
Well, let me explain.
What did you guys think about the Easter egg? And a lot of people were talking about it on the internet about having Guybrush Threepwood
Oh, the
from
painting?
Monkey Island in here. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah.
I heard about it like after I'd already played that section.
Okay.
So, but it sounds cool.
They make some reference. There's like when they show the paintings of all the pirates, there's one without a name. Later on, you see, I think they show like a G and a U on one of like the scraped off paintings. But he's one of the founders of this
Yeah.
whole organization.
There's still,
and later, you get to see Guybrush's skeleton sitting at that table, which is a little bit alarming.
Yeah, it's all cartoony. That was the weird part.
Yeah, exactly. It was pixelated. It really stood out. Let's see. Cork, you were really in love with this game. We haven't really
I
addressed
loved
that.
it. I thought it was fantastic.
So you just played through all of them as well. We
I
talked
did.
about it on the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. One quick thing, and this is one of those like embarrassing things. Like, is it possible that I missed a mechanic the entire time? And in which case, I'd like to apologize. You can't throw grenades back in this one, could you? Like you could in Uncharted 3.
Oh, interesting.
Because
Oh,
that
I
was
don't
like a
know.
mechanic that like a little meter would pop up in Uncharted 3, and then if you hit the button at the right time when it was in the white spot, then you would throw the grenade back. And as far as I can tell, you get the indicator, but
I so rarely
The best case
have
scenario is you will run
grenades
into an
to
explosion.
deal with.
Yeah, I was playing on such an easy mode. Maybe they just didn't throw grenades at me very often.
Anyway, I missed that.
Yeah, I never saw a prompt or anything for that.
I'm going to look like a huge asshole if it was like, that's like the easiest thing. You just hit,
Yeah, you just had to do it, Cork.
But anyway, I missed that.
I mean, it's weird because like there's definitely not like a tutorial about doing it, even if you can. So
Yeah.
I feel like they tutorialize so much of like everything you can do in that game. It's kind of it would be weird if you could, and they
Yeah,
don't
Sam would have yelled it out so many times.
Yeah.
Throw it back,
little brother.
Oh, look at us. Are we brothers?
We
I
talked,
got all the recessive genes.
somebody wrote in and says, Zach K from Austin, Texas. Love the podcast, but let's get right to the nitty gritty here. No one has mentioned in the Uncharted 4 game club yet that young Sam Drake looks exactly like Conan O'Brien. I couldn't take any of the flashbacks seriously as I expected Andy Richter to pop out of every face.
Young Nathan Drake?
Young Sam Drake.
Young Sam Drake. I can't be the only one who noticed this, right? I think you are actually, Zach.
I wouldn't call it noticing as much as I would imagining.
Sure. Let's jump around a little bit. What did you guys think about that flashback sequence? I think it was just called Brothers Drake, where you're going through the house.
That was awesome.
I liked it. So did anybody else just wear like hats through most of the house?
There were
two
I
that I
wore like
found.
a
Yep, I found
samurai
two.
hat most of the
There
way,
were
and then I
three,
found
yeah.
another one.
Oh, there were 3 in there? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I loved also just like the spinning the globe thing and then stopping. It's like, oh, that reminds me of my childhood where I spent dozens of hours spinning a dumb globe and slamming my finger
middle
down.
of the Indian Ocean.
And also
That's where
that
we're
puzzle
going.
later with spinning the globe.
Oh, also in the realm of foreshadowing, apparently one of like Neil Druckmann's biggest regrets with this game is in that chapter. Originally, there was like a fake sword fighting sequence where you and Sam each get swords, and that would teach you the mechanics for the end.
They
boss
really
then.
could have used that.
They certainly
would've
could
helped
have.
a lot,
A
yeah.
lot
One
of
thing-
people complained about that.
One thing I want to get to about that flashback before we talk about the end boss,
Sure.
is this is another thing that from a story perspective, the fact that like, all right, we're robbing this lady's house. She finds us just long enough to give us some important backstory.
Yeah.
And then like then keels over just as the police are, like that's another one of those.
Well, that's
like,
what she was living for, and so then finally.
It reminded me of like that Seinfeld where the kid keeps calling Elaine thinking it's like his nanny or something.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, I'm dead now. Okay, bye. I'm dead now forever. It's basically just that sequence.
That happened to me actually, so I found it pretty believable. Actually, what was interesting to that about that sequence is like that's how they find out, or we find out that their name isn't Drake.
Right, which they've hinted at.
Have they?
In
I
the
guess
past,
I've missed
yeah.
that.
Cork,
So-
you just played through them again. Do you remember how they hinted at it?
I don't recall that.
Okay.
I
So-
think what it is before they'd hinted. I was just reading about this. Like, I forget which installment it was in, but like they had hinted at it as like Drake, like Nathan had given himself that name as sort of
Yeah.
like not rebranding, but like sort of reimagining himself as this great explorer. When I guess like in this game you find out it's not so much of like a conscious like this is who I'm going to be sort of thing as much as it is like, hey, we need to change our name because we need to escape.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And that was the story he was telling Elena. So is that the first time she finds out that his name really isn't
Yeah.
Drake?
Yeah, I think so. You think she would have asked that
Yeah, you'd be
earlier.
like, I don't know. I just felt like that should have been more of like a surprise for other people or
We got a
something.
lot of comments on that section specifically. Barbara writes in and says, throughout the series, we'd been teased that Drake isn't actually Nate's last name. We finally learned that their mother's name was Cassandra Morgan, and she was an adventurer like her sons. Who really was Cassandra Morgan? Who is Nate and Sam's father? Why did he abandon his sons and get rid of their mother's stuff? What sense did you guys get from that little Gone Home sequence about the Drake family?
I did want to know more about their dad. Like I
Yeah.
appreciated the stuff we got about their mom, which is actually pretty cool.
That she's an adventurer.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool, and the old lady they meet. But I was like, who is this old lady other than their mom's boss?
Well, Margarito Granados writes in and says, is it possible that Evelyn, the old lady, is Nate
is
and
the
Sam's
dad?
great-grandmother? She's definitely old enough to be Nate's great-grandmother. I mean, hell, she knew Amelia Earhart.
Oh man.
I mean,
I
don't
don't think that's the case.
they pretty much clarify that they're that's not the
She's like, she worked for me. I think she would have said like, yeah, but she was my daughter.
Yeah,
And
I,
she
mean, I
made-
guess I don't see a reason for there to be a lie there. I don't see a reason for there to be
Right.
some facade.
And she ended up marrying a Japanese man and whatnot, going through those stories.
Yeah.
It's also very Gone Home.
That was also kind of cool. Gone Home.
Yeah, it's like as is working through the house, you work your way chronologically through this relationship as it's changing throughout the letters.
Was there information in there about their mom's parents too? I felt like there was like multiple generations that you were going through.
Well, I think a lot of it was relating to Evelyn.
Yeah, I thought it was mainly just about the family in that house.
Yeah.
So the family in the house, and not.
and not the Morgan.
There were little bits, and like throughout it, I think Nate and Sam would talk about how much of a dickhole their dad was and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then when you find the stuff at the end,
So was their dad still alive? Is that the impression you got?
I don't know. Yeah, that's unclear. I would assume not. I would assume Nathan, once he got a taste for blood, went and brutally murdered his father.
Oh, that sounds
I
right.
think they
the
wanna-
first kill.
Yeah, they want to imply that. I did like in that sequence when the old lady draws the gun on him, and it's a nice bit of mirroring. It's like poetry, it rhymes, where Sam like steps in front of Nathan to take the shot, which also happened on the cliffside, which I also want to point out to keep my Incredibles analogy going from last time. It was also very much like that scene in Incredibles where Mr. Incredible grabs Mirage, and he's like, "Oh, I'll snap her neck." And Cinder's like, "Go ahead and do it. I know you won't. You're the hero." And there's that exact scene with Rafe where he's like, "Go ahead and shoot Nadine. I know
Yeah.
you won't. You're the
Well,
hero."
Also, that wasn't your Incredibles analogy. That was someone on Twitter, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Somebody
but
wrote
okay.
in.
I cited Harry Mackin, former Game Informer intern. with
Okay.
that,
I
with
just
that
want to
whole
make sure.
saga.
Keeping
I think
you
it
honest.
was interesting how well that like backstory stuff was incorporated too. It was nice, like, okay, this is where he got the journal, where he became obsessed with Sir Francis Drake. You know, here's a sketch of the ring that's obviously a huge part of the beginning, and like he's had that ring around his neck since the beginning of the series, and then it's also you see how he got it in Uncharted 3. You know, when he stole it, but then I don't know. I just like to see how everything connected, whether or not it was just like coincidence they were able to make it work, how much of it was planned in advance.
And-
Which brings me to a question though: is
Yeah.
like, didn't they record or have scripted a bunch of stuff for Uncharted 4 originally before Amy Hennig left,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this was completely retooled, right? So I would
It's
like
kind
to
of
know
rebooted. Certain sections stayed.
what, like,
roughly
do you
the
know
same.
any of that? Like, what changed?
Not
and, like
specifically.
some of the story beats.
They've been pretty cagey. The story beats. I mean, outside of Sam, presumably from that trailer being
bad,
secretly
maybe
evil
more
and whatnot.
bad,
Yeah, we don't really know too much about it.
That seems like a huge like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I remember on the trip they talked about how they kind of narrowed down some of the gameplay areas. Like originally it was a little bit more open. It was even a wider linear, as they like to say. But yeah, not much.
Just jumping back real quick to that conversation that you're talking about, I also liked how it really fleshed out Sam's motivation as well. That you find out, like, okay, he's not just obsessed with this pirate because he wants a bunch of money. Like, basically, this was his mom's legacy, and like
Yeah.
as the older son, you can kind of see how that would matter more to him than potentially Nathan. And
It has that classic thing of, you know, playing through the first three games, being like, well, why wouldn't Drake constantly be mentioning like this Avery treasure? Because clearly it's important to the family history and whatnot. Like this is like the ultimate thing that he's never mentioned before, but presumably it's in the back of his mind the entire
Yeah.
time. But like this is the real score we got to get to.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it's just because, like, you know, his brother died on that hunt, and so he's like, I don't want to ever go
Could
back
be.
to that
Yeah.
again.
I don't-
kind of forget about it.
On episode 1 of this club, you kind of mentioned the.
How did you listen to that?
Shut up.
I love you, Reeves.
All right, so you mentioned the kind of the parallels with The Last of Us's expansion or the DLC
Yeah,
for it. You
yeah.
know how like the squirt gun fight and everything. I think the way that the photographs
Yep.
were incorporated also was really clever. Even though in The Last of Us you could integrate with Facebook, which made it even better.
Right, in the Left Behind DLC. Yeah.
Behind DLC,
But then
but-
absolutely you take a little photograph
Yep,
in
you're like,
the house as
and then
kids.
that's like the big stinger, not a stinger, but I mean it's like a nice moment at the end.
Yeah.
End where your daughter finds that photograph of you and your brother, and you happen to be wearing a samurai hat because you made the decision to wear that.
And I assume it's customized based on what hat you want
Yeah,
to
Yeah,
wear.
I wasn't wearing a hat.
Yeah, that's a good
so
point.
I
I guess it
didn't,
would
I didn't have it.
Yeah,
Oh.
I think that clearly those guys are really into photographs.
Yeah,
And
you have to
the
YouTube that
character-
ending to see that hat, though, Joe. Seriously,
Yeah, I
I'm
hear
not,
it's
I'm not messing
that
around.
hat.
That's great.
I wanted to go back to something. You're talking about, you know, Amy Hennig and being a part of this before and stuff. So in the credits, there's that section that's, you know, like
Dedicated to her memory.
Jesus Christ! No, but it's like, hey, thank you for your
contribution.
effort.
it
Seemed
says
like
like,
a
hey,
classy, yeah,
it
thing.
says with sincere thanks to Amy Hennig for her contributions for the Uncharted franchise. Which at first I'm like, oh, that's not, like Ben said, that's pretty classy. And then something rung a little weird with it for me because, like, by all rumors, that was a pretty acrimonious split.
We
right?
don't really know. It seems there's some story there that we don't really know.
So are you saying like the fact that she's listed in the credits doesn't seem as genuine?
I don't like. I guess I was wondering if anyone else had that vibe or something. Because I mean,
Well,
maybe
even if
it's
it
just
is acrimonious, like, what's the problem with taking a classy route and just being like, hey, put past behind us, like, thanks a lot.
and I like that. And I guess I hope that it's genuine and not just sort of like, well, people are going to expect this.
It's a story that I can't wait to hear all the details years and years from now.
Yeah.
And I really want to know, like, seriously, to go back to it, I want to know what her vision for Uncharted 4 was.
Yeah. And not even necessarily that it would have been like better or worse or whatever, but
No,
like,
it's just so
just the
different.
idea of like
Yeah.
an alternate version of this game, I think would be.
and we'll
fun
find
to
out,
hear.
I think, when Amy's old and has a gun. And then we break into her house.
break into her
and
house.
she
No.
Explains the entire story and then goes on
I'll
to
paint freckles on
death
my face so I
sentence.
look like a little kid. It's gonna
Never
be great.
explain your life story.
I will say the little like PS at the end of the credits that said "F you" was a little bit uncalled for, but
Great. Thanks, Reeves. Appreciate it.
You got problems.
So, going off
my
of favorite
aunt
moments.
has problems.
That's a callback. So let's see. Someone writes in and says, I actually have a tie for my favorite chapter to play in this game, which was something I asked. This is from John Gregory, former Game Informer intern.
Oh, what's up,
the
John?
first is chapter 17, For Better or Worse. Nate and Elena working through what they need to know. Through what they need to work through is some of the best writing in the series, and it's really interesting to see some of the enthusiasm come back into Nate after watching him deal with knowing he upset her. Her showing up there might be a little contrived, but it was worth it to me. And then he also really liked the epilogue, which we can get to later. But yeah, I think that might be my favorite. My favorite part of Uncharted 4 is just the Elena relationship and feeling new emotions in a game. Just like you mentioned, being put in the doghouse, the Naughty Dog house. It's like I've never felt that as a protagonist in a game. Or also the feeling after she shows up and storms off and Sully runs off with her. And Nate says, "Sullivan, take care of her." But
That's
just
a cool scene, though.
Yeah.
Like at the hotel in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm kind of disappointed that I saw that in a trailer.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
I wish that had just been a surprise.
And they have like her teary trying not to cry face. But real quick, like is after that, I thought it was so interesting when Nate and Sam continue on their adventure and just having the idea of Sam subtly trying to convince Nathan that like this is what he's good at and that he should be having a great time. Like, this is crazy, isn't it? Nathan's just like, all right, let's just keep going here. Like I've never heard a character so affected by something emotionally. It's so subtle, I guess. In a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too. And actually, because like that dialogue worked so well and it seemed like they were genuinely, there was some forgiveness happening there. There was a couple of scenes where he's like talking in front of all the dead skeleton bodies. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah,
And he's,
absolutely.
Like,
That's
getting
a
really
huge one for me.
passionate about it, and you can see Elena's like looking like, oh yeah, he really likes this, and like that kind of like forgiveness
But
happening.
it wasn't yeah, I think it was sadder than that. And that scene specifically really stood out to me. And in the hotel scene, she actually has a line where she's like, I saw your face when you walked in that door. Like, I know that you love this stuff. And I feel like that was a more somber realization that like, I've never seen him like this.
I think
Well,
when
I was just gonna say, like that scene in particular made me think, like, oh, well, they're wrapping things up and they're gonna kill Elena. Like I was, sure, like positive for a while that like Elena's gonna die at the end.
I really like for me, my favorite scene between those two was, and I know I'm not the only person to bring this up or whatever, but like, like the bonding scene when they're basically both in that Jeep, and then that music just swells up, and there's not some back and forth between them or whatever. Like it's a moment where, for a series or like for a relationship that relies so heavily on like their banter and dialogue, it was a really great moment that sort of let the silence speak for itself.
Yeah.
Like, and so when that, I don't know what the track is called or whatever, but like for me, it's like I'm someone who like I appreciate when like good sound design in a game, but I tend to only notice it in those really big like standout moments,
Like the Red Dead Ride to Mexico, stuff like that.
Yeah, that kind
Yeah.
like the really big sort of like tentpole moments that sort of, I don't know, like ostentatiously use sound or like to really hammer it home. And that was one where it's just like really hit me as I was driving. I was just like, I love this.
Yeah, it's a really great moment. That's after chapter 17 that John Gregory says there, where there is a lot of tension and it's a lot of Nathan trying to work with it and realizing that she was really mad. She had a couple great lines where she's like, "Yeah, I came back for you this time."
Yeah, I almost didn't. She
Yeah,
said
right.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
Oh,
But that scene in particular, like after they worked through their problems, working through the Jeep and swinging off a waterfall and all that stuff, it brought home again something that the artist Naughty Dog really like to talk about. And I feel like a lot of people do this in animated films and whatnot as well. But just trying to like mirror the environment to what's happening emotionally inside the character. And so obviously when Drake is at his lowest point, like crawling on the island. It's this crazy storm. That's a very obvious example.
Yeah.
But then also just having that moment where their relationship's a little bit more patched over, and then you get like the uplifting music and the green grass. It's like a minute-long sequence, but it is really memorable.
Yeah, I think this game does a really good job of kind of getting me on board with the Nathan and Elena relationship, which up until this point has fallen completely flat for me. I think that we're with Drake, and he's a really engaging, exciting character. And I think Elena, to me, the whole time up until 4, has always felt like when you've got a friend who's super outgoing and funny, and they're with someone that you're just like, I don't know, maybe when you're alone with her, she's really great, but I just don't see it. Whatever, you know, I mean, obviously there's some kind of spark there, but she hasn't ever really held her own. She's always just kind of been like the Kate Capshaw, you know, romantic interest, where it's just like, you're just a foil more than anything else. You're like, you are a thing that gets wounded so that I can carry you along. You are a person that like has a few like incompetent moments so that I can seem stronger.
That
and
I have to go rescue.
yeah, and here you see like there's the moment like where she's on the elevator with the Jeep, for instance, and like you're working. He's like, oh crap, they're just gonna tear her apart, and then you're like, she just hauls ass out of there and like runs over the guys.
Yeah,
and,
that seems good.
And they refer to like the fact that you're good at this. You are good at this, Elena. Like we are good. We're a good team. It's like, and I think that I was completely on board with it now. And I think that I look at the past games, which I think were great in their own ways, but I think that it'll probably color the way that I look at that pairing too in some ways.
Yeah.
Which
Brad
is a
Dame-
little unfair.
Yeah. Brad Dame writes in on a similar note. He says, overall, I think Uncharted 4 is the best game in the series. I want to point out just how good the writing and voice work is here in particular. After Elena and Nathan have their fight, I loved how right after that, Nathan was noticeably upset, but not showing it. The one-liners stopped for a while, and you could feel the heaviness in Nathan's voice, as well as some of the desperation in Sam's voice as he tried to cheer him up. It was subtle but effective. I have to say, though, not a lot of the gameplay moments are sticking out to me in this later half. That's from Brad. But yeah, the Elena stuff I was really riveted by. I love the sound of her voice. Some of like the combat barks and whatnot from her, maybe some of the weaker voice acting in the game, but I was still really fascinated by that relationship. And a lot of people wrote in and complained about this, and maybe it's just because I was playing on easy that I didn't notice it too much, but I really actually loved the Mummy Bomb chapter. I loved it. Which then at the end, mainly because they have that great moment where she pretends that she's dead and he's so distraught over it. But then there's this really sweet moment where she's like rubbing mud off his face. She's like, oh, you're all covered in mud. Yeah. And then at the end of it, there's like, good talk. It's a really sweet
I even like that
sentiment.
scene too, where they get captured and they're hanging upside down. It's like, well, at least we're not blowing up, and then they
The
start
scene,
going off.
the
I thought it
scene
was
is
a
cool,
scene.
but those mummy bombs were total horse.
I thought it
Earlier
was
in the level,
fine.
maybe.
Everyone was talking about like, oh, they're just constantly exploding. And I keep dying. I don't think I died from them
No,
once.
I never died once.
Oh man, I died from them a couple times,
and I
and I
mean,
think
I
what's
got-
frustrating. Hey,
Sure.
what's frustrating about it is that like
Getting
there's,
talked
there's
over?
not
Is that frustrating?
predictable. Like,
Right.
Like sometimes you walk by one, and then, like by what method are they triggered? I'm
Yeah,
playing
they're-
a game. I want to know what's happened because like I walk close to one and nothing happens, but then I take 2 steps behind it, and then it starts to fuse
And
up.
then you
and
see the visual thing and you run away.
yeah,
Yeah,
Well, yeah, but
You
then
just
you
do a
run
little
away, and then
roll.
another one in front
And
of
then
you
you
goes,
roll
and
away.
then-
I thought it was fun where I'd roll one direction, be like, oh crap, I gotta roll another direction. And then like those weird rooms with all like the body parts dangling. I thought it was effed up, really cool.
That area, that the environments there were cool. The mechanics surrounding like the mummies were fresh, and it's not even like I was dying constantly. I probably died like 3 or 4 times total in that sequence. But like because each one, I just totally had no idea why or how it happened. It was
They're just
frustrating for
magic
me.
mummy bombs.
Yeah,
totally.
I guess.
Yeah.
I think that like when the person wrote in saying that there wasn't like a big moment. I think that's what I think was made this so strong was that the Libertalia stuff was like parsed out. The whole mystery came out in such a steady drip that you realize like, oh crap! Like you're led to believe this is this amazing pirate utopia for a very long time, and then you there and you're like something went wrong here. And at least personally, I didn't see it happening. I think way ahead of time. It just kind of happened naturally, and I think it was fascinating. Because I always think like, oh, this guy he's kind of like a One-Eyed Willie from Goonies, just this lovable scamp, and then you realize, oh no, this is just a straight-up psychopath. Like something, like clicked in this dude, and like it was all this horrible plan. He's like fooling everybody and ripping them all off. It was great.
Yeah, the sort of the breadcrumb trail that you follow in this, and the way that mystery sort of deepens as the game goes on, I think is the best in the series.
Yeah.
Also, sorry for cutting you off before.
No, that's
Jeff.
fine. And
Hey!
also,
Not you.
in terms of set piece moments too, like they didn't have the huge, you dangling off a train or whatever, but I thought they had a lot more interesting sequences throughout the thing, like the clock tower scene was like super cool. And it's not, I guess it's not as memorable as being in like a sinking ship or whatever, but just the amount of animation and insanity that was going on throughout the the entire sequence as you're falling
That
down.
one definitely stands out for me too.
And like the biggest one of the game, they kind of spoiled by showing it at E3, but you guys did a video of trying to break it. But that whole chase with the Jeep is still really cool.
Yeah, Lucas writes in from Texas. He says, after playing through the entire game, I have to say that Chapter 11 is by far the high point when it comes to set pieces. The combination of surviving the bell tower and then having the exhilarating escape chasing in the Jeep had my blood pumping. What's interesting to me is that Reiner pointed out in his review that he felt like the game didn't have a big memorable set piece like the train or airplane sections in previous games, and I guess I disagree.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, it's interesting because they're like, well, we've done trains, we did a plane, we did a boat. They're like, what's left? Like, I guess a giant chase scene, which actually totally works. Like, you're like, well, cars aren't as exciting as like a train, but I don't know. It was pretty cool.
And you mentioned it, but I will briefly plug that I think a nice companion piece of this game club is Jeff Cork and I went through that sequence and just tried to find the edges of it.
And I talked to you like right after that, after we recorded, I played it, and I have a way deeper appreciation for that after running through it successfully, after seeing like all the weird stuff kind of around the edges, like you say.
Yeah.
And I want to say, too, like that scene at the bell tower right after that, when Rafe calls you on the phone.
Yeah.
Like, that was a cool scene, but also I was just blown away with the camera. And I was like, I can't think of that many games where they're cutting from this scene to Rafe in the car and then back like in a movie. Like, it just felt like... And it's all done in real time. Yeah, the phone conversation.
Okay, yeah.
And they did it a couple times throughout the game, but I was just like, that really just impressed me again.
The thing, first of all, I'm a stupid man. That puzzle, it was one of those things where I'd like just force my way through the first part, like whatever, I don't understand these rules, but I guess I got it. And then it's like, oh, here's 4 more layers where it gets more and more complex about rotating the little pieces in your notebook and slowly setting this stuff up. I had the most trouble with that in the game, but I eventually got it. But the phone stuff in particular is really interesting to me because they like, I guess he had talked to Elena on the phone, but cell phones weren't really a big part of the game up until that chapter. I think that's in chapter 11 then.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like a lot of phone stuff and him talking to Sam and the controller vibrating for Sam texting you and him like taking pictures of stuff and sending it to Sam. Where earlier in the game I had thought with the big map of Madagascar, like, oh, he should whip out his phone and just take a picture of that. But then the fact that kind of jarring phone being forced down your throat in this chapter paid off with the idea that Rafe had hacked it and got Sully's number and whatnot.
Yeah, except it was a nice... Was it the third one where that one English guy was talking about his limited voice plan and like he didn't want to use his minutes?
In the third one?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Oh, I don't know. I like that part a lot.
Did puzzles stand out for you guys? Do you have favorites from the second half here?
I like the one puzzle where you have to walk on the platform just so it blows up. And I love the first time that you see it, where you see evidence of, I know you guys were talking about it earlier, like people are always one step ahead of you, but you can never see where they are. And you follow the muddy footprints and you're like, all right, here we go. And then you have to do one yourself. I like that puzzle. It wasn't like...
That was good.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say I liked the one that you really struggled with.
Oh, I love that one.
Turning
Yeah,
the
that was
pages
cool.
and
I
stuff
like the idea of incorporating the
texting.
notebook more, I guess, but it was just overwhelming at first for my dumb brain.
This is the moment that I felt the stupidest is like after the muddy footprint one, I felt super cheated. I was like, there's clearly a puzzle here that like I wanted to do, and they're just like letting me walk through it. And just, I want to know what the rules were here. What was this puzzle?
Yeah.
And I did not have the forethought to think like, well, they're obviously going to give me another one later. I just thought that it was like I was a little bit disappointed and thought they were kind of cheaping out on the puzzle by just letting me go through it.
Yeah.
So
another favorite moment here, we have, who is this? Barbara writing it again saying, it's pretty silly, but one of my favorite things in the game was from the beginning of Chapter 11. Chapter 11 really has a lot packed in it. I bought an apple from a vendor, and a little ways down from that, I pet a lemur.
Oh, yeah, I did that too.
As I was walking away from the lemur, it jumped up on me and stole the apple out of my hand. This led to a conversation between Nate and Sully about how Nate wanted to get a dog. Did you not have the dog conversation?
I had the dog conversation. I didn't buy the apple, though. I just saw the
completely with
lemur.
you, yeah. It did something really smart where I went over and pet the yak, which is a nice callback to Uncharted 2. And then, like, because they know where you are, then it rotates the camera around, and it's this great moment where, like, this woman runs into Sully, and all her apples go spilling, and then, like, Sully has to pick it up. And just a nice exchange between Sully and this random other woman.
That's cool. I did like the scene where he runs into a vendor selling all the shirts that he wears. Did
Is
you
that
guys get
true?
that? There's
No.
a scene where he's like, "Hey, Nate, you want to buy me a shirt?" And it's like the exact shirt he's wearing.
Oh, okay, with, like,
Oh,
the weird
right,
patterns
right,
on
right.
it.
Yeah.
That marketplace was absurd with how many people are there, and I love that in the photo mode you can turn off all the people as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Also, this is really nerdy, but on the Idle Thumbs podcast, they're obsessed with this. But in the photo mode, you can turn off enemies and turn off allies at any point in the game. And they were just digging around with it, apparently. This is like Jake Rodkin specifically, who worked on Firewatch and Walking Dead and stuff. But he was talking about how they were so obsessed with tweaking it and just going in blind to the start of this game. The first scene where they're in the prison and Rafe is there and they're playing dominoes, they paused it and said, "Hide enemies." And then Rafe just disappeared. Like in this cutscene, so it like revealed that he was bad. And before you knew anything, it's like, all right, I guess this guy's turning on us because clearly he's an enemy because the photo mode spoiled it for
I
me.
mean, I think that's pretty obvious that Rafe is pretty terrible from the outset.
His voice is too good. Yeah.
Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, someone wrote in and says Steve Buscemi, but it is not Steve Buscemi.
He sounds exactly like Steve Buscemi.
He sounds
It does
Steve
have that
Buscemi-ish.
sound for sure.
Yeah, like a Steve Buscemi guy. Let's see. A lot of people wrote in about the supernatural stuff.
So glad.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jason writes in and says, Uncharted games have always had the supernatural twist about 3/4 of the way through. All 4 had was exploding mummies. Were you guys surprised by this? I was actually kind of relieved, LOL. And then Garrett writes in from Nevada, hello, there's something that confuses me about the Uncharted series. I've heard you guys repeatedly think it's weird that it's supernatural, but Indiana Jones has plenty of unnatural stuff in it. This is just the genre. Stop complaining about supernatural stuff.
I don't mind the supernatural stuff, but it's always done in a way that is not fun.
The bullet sponge angle, yeah.
Yeah, it is terrible.
Yeah, the supernatural. It's not so much. I don't think people would complain about the supernatural twists in those if they were presented in a way that was entertaining to play, or that like didn't feel like the story was just going off the rails at that point.
That's
like
not a Yeti, it's an immortal blue guy.
Yeah.
Inside a Yeti
Yeah.
suit.
Oh, hang on. Lone Gamer here actually has a point there. He says, I'm here to tell you that none of these games ever had supernatural twists. The first game was a contaminated corpse inside of a golden idol that caused people to go insane, pretty much a biological weapon. The second game was special sap produced by a tree that gave people increased strength and resilience to injury. It was pretty much a drug. Finally, the third game, it was supposedly a gin in a large jar, but it was just a chemical weapon stored in said jar. So therefore, there is no such thing as supernatural stuff in Uncharted. But
This
clearly,
one felt more grounded. Went with the more grounded route.
there
which
were
I
no
actually
pirate
appreciated.
skeletons.
I know. I'm happy about that, but still. I was waiting for it. Oh, the animations would have been so good when you smash them and they fly apart.
Speaking of things that we're glad that weren't in the game, one of the things that I was a little afraid of going into this, especially the second half, was that like it being clear that it's the last game in the series. I was afraid that there would be a temptation to try and wrap up or touch base with a lot of like other loose ends from previous games.
Totally.
Like, I was waiting for like, oh, here's Chloe showing up in a biplane and saving us from something, or like who knows what. you know?
Absolutely. It's amazing they didn't use Chloe. I understand that's a whole can of worms emotionally for Nathan and whatnot, but there's one quick reference to Cutter early on where he's like, oh, that's what Cutter's for. And then-
I thought maybe he'd show up again. Actually,
Yeah,
after that.
a reference and like staying in universe, I think, is one thing. But like you think of, I don't know, like other games. I feel like a game like Metal Gear Solid 4 or something, wrapping up the Solid Snake story, really goes out of its way to just like shoehorn everything from the series in there. And I'm glad that this one sort of was like, you know what, Chloe is complicated when it comes to like Nate and Elena, and we really want the spotlight on them. So let's just,
Well, I think it did a great job.
wave that off.
You didn't really talk about it in the first episode. Shut up, Ben. But I think like the opening credits though, where you see Nathan's sketchbook, and it's just all those awesome moments from the Uncharted series.
Yeah.
And then you see when he's in his attic, he's interacting with all these things that if you hadn't played them, you'd just be like, oh, he's got a bunch of cool old crap. But you're like, wow, that's that skull that he got here, and this is that thing that he had here. This was a huge part of that plot. So I think that fan service is definitely there, but it isn't just characters popping in like you're saying and like, hey, you owe me that beer. Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between, I think, an acknowledgement or a recognition of like where the series has been versus the fan service of just like, that feels inauthentic. Just trying to like shoehorn something in.
Yeah. Let's get to the final boss here. Brad writes in and says, on the final boss, I didn't like it. I felt the left-right system was flawed and not fun. The concept of sword fighting the villain felt pretty dumb to me, though I guess you could draw parallels in the, they're both just dirty pirates or whatever, he says. Despite this, the very end where Rafe gets crushed by a pile of treasure was a satisfying death for that asshat. I am so glad there was no BS supernatural bullet sponge creatures this time around. Good job, Naughty Dog. What did you guys think of that final setup and the final fight and all that?
I like the final fight in concept. I like the idea of them fighting while the pirate ship is burning down, and that was a really cool idea. But it didn't. Yeah, it wasn't as fun. Like, the mechanics weren't as fun. And I compare it to, there's a couple of scenes where you fight Nadine, fist fights, and I always thought those fights were really cool, actually, because you kind of, the mechanics are a little bit more simple, but then there's more like spectacle going on around it.
Because you end up like sliding down, then you get eventually to that
Yeah, especially the one where you and your brother are fighting together.
you both
that
take
one's
her on, and
really
she's
cool.
kicking both your asses.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun, but this one didn't work as well, and they didn't have as much like spectacle to go along with it.
I think it looked cool, but yeah, it all coming down to new mechanics at the very end is a little bit jarring. It reminds me of like, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but let's say Metal Gear Solid 2, just to go back, sword fight at the end. There's another certain Batman game that ends with a sword fight at the end, and it's like, well, if they're going to go for it, I want it to be really fun. And when it comes down to just hit the right button, it's not.
And it's not always just sword fights either. This is just a problem that I don't think anyone likes it when a video game does this, which is the like, hey, instead of using all of the skills and all of the things that you've been doing in the whole game, instead of what the game is about, we're going to drop some like weird new sort of clunky mechanic on you. And that's what the culmination of the adventure is. And to me, that's always disappointing, no matter what the game is or the format.
It took me a couple tries, and I felt like I just kind of fumbled my way through it. Like I had to like stop and think, do I really know the difference between left and right? Because it kept telling me like this way. Then I was watching it, like the way he was telegraphing it. Just for whatever reason, I had a really hard time reading it.
You got to look for the camera flashing in the background. I think that's the cue.
The guy with the beard.
Yeah, that's when you attack.
And it was I think it was also really repetitive too. Like you got the mechanics instantly, and then for me there was a lot of just like both of us standing there. And I'm like, okay, like. Are you going to attack me at some point here?
Sam coughing every once in a while.
It was just a very long sequence, and you're just basically going left and right, left, right.
Yeah, and
waiting for the final blow the entire time.
Yeah, and Uncharted's not a series where they like throw life bars up at you or anything, but that also means that you're kind of like, am I doing this right? Am I missing a thing? Because like I didn't actually die in that sequence, but it went on like probably twice as long as I felt like it should, and I kept wondering whether or not I was is there some like gimmick in the environment that I should be using that I'm missing, or like because like especially when you even succeed or fail, all the animations are sort of. They're the same things basically over and over again too. So it's just
it was like the fist fights with the guys in the laundry room or whatever. When you're breaking out of jail, where you're like, do I need to move you over by the wall? Is that
let's mosey on this way?
I keep hurting you, and it's not enough.
I did love it. I love Rafe in general. I think a lot of it's just their performance. Turns out I like Steve Buscemi a lot.
Yeah.
But I loved his line right when you start fighting, where he goes, "Come on, legend." It's like it just seemed like a really cool.
I did like I'm not going to be able to enjoy any of this if you're still breathing. Like it's just like I was like, that's a pretty good thing to say.
Yeah.
I do love the fact. This may be getting a little into epilogue stuff, but
sure.
Like I was wrong last time when I said that Nathan is finally just going to get the whole haul. That
of
he's
course.
But they got some of it.
He did get a pretty.
They didn't get fabulously wealthy.
It was the perfect amount.
Was
but
it
they got
implied
the
that they
right
went
amount.
back though and got it all?
Oh, that goes to another point though.
What?
No. I think the idea was that like Sam, as they were escaping, managed to like grab a lot and
I got
slipped
that
it to
part of it.
Elena.
Yeah.
Right.
But like Ben hits on a thing that to me seemed ridiculous, is that they're willing to fly all over the world and go through all these ancient traps or whatever. And now you know exactly where millions of dollars is, and you're gonna let I guess there are some rocks on that.
There's a spooky Rafe skeleton down there.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I thought it was just sort of implied that they did go back because there was photos of them with all that treasure and stuff. I don't know.
Really? In the epilogue?
Well,
Like on
and
the
they
fridge
have
or
an
something?
amazing house that probably costs millions of dollars. That's right on a beach. I don't know.
I don't know if I got that. I think
How did
just
they
their
afford
scavenging business worked really well.
Yeah, I mean, I got the idea that like that house on the beach probably costs $50,000 because it's so far away from civilization.
There's so much detail. I'm surprised you can't find the contract for how much that house exactly costs. Before we get to all that stuff, let's see. Just the ending in general. Nathan writes in and says, the biggest surprise for me is that there really wasn't a big surprise. I was fully expecting the death of at least one main character and a Sam betrayal. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy that my beloved characters lived, but I'd mentally prepared myself for the loss of one or more of them. Also, I didn't really consider Sam coming clean on the made-up drug lord story to be a big reveal. I think it was a decent reveal. I think that they would lie through gameplay is an interesting concept, but I was convinced that Sully was going to die during that dog reference. When he's like, we'll name the dog Sully. This is in chapter 11.
Oh, you
towards
thought
the end
that was the reason that he was going to die?
Totally, because I thought like Sully was going to die, and then at the end you see a dog, and its name would say Sully, and you'd be like, good job,
In
kiddo."
memoriam.
Yeah, exactly.
His soul goes into the dog.
Blake Willis writes in and says, I found the game to be a bit dull on the story. To start off, why do these characters feel the need to lie to each other? Because it tells a good story.
You ever watch a sitcom?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
never did pay off, by the way. I never ended up believing why Nathan did not come clean to Elena about that.
I think they talk about it where he's like, I just didn't want to hurt you or something.
I
And
know.
she goes, that's BS. Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't handle me when I would actually, you couldn't win the argument.
He
I
has
know
a
that-
moment where he says that he was protecting himself and not
Exactly.
her. Yeah,
It's
and I
someone
think
wrote
that was-
in with a very lengthy comparison to Breaking Bad, which I thought was an interesting analogy as well.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I know they tried to explain it. It fell flat for me.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyway, so Blake writes in and says, I think the ending leaves way too much wiggle room for a sequel for Drake and family. Honestly, I think Nathan should have died at the end. After Nathan's dishonesty with his wife, his brother's dishonesty with Nathan, and how high the stakes felt, it makes sense that he would get into trouble he couldn't get out of. What is stopping a new character from taking his family hostage in another game? What's really stopping him from going on another adventure?
Naughty Dog?
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
I guess I guess to me, like I can see where he's coming from, but to me, like the larger tone of the entire series and like this fantasy adventure kind of feeling would make that really weird to me if you just killed him off at the end.
It does feel like Naughty Dog just wants to be done with it, though, too. Which I'm fine with. I'd be happy to have them do something else. But I was kind of thinking, like, well, they got a kid. I wonder if they would just, like, all right, now she's an adult and she's an adventurer and kind of spin off the series in a different direction, which I don't think they would do, but, like, I was just kind of...
I'm sure like Sony Bend will make one for the PlayStation 6 or something that stars
I just
Cassie.
think, in 10 years, maybe we'll get a resurrection in some way.
Of Rafe.
Making Elena a widow, I don't think accomplishes anything other than just being like, well, that's done. You know what I mean? I think that it's far more interesting to leave it open-ended and just think about like what happens next and leave like the player to kind of be able to imagine that.
Yeah, and Jeff, I know you'll appreciate this. This is for me like a pet peeve in all kinds of storytelling across media but like the show that's the worst about it is 24. In that there are certain things out there, like certain shows or stories that like have no viable way of sunsetting characters other than just killing them.
Yep.
You know? So like in 24, there's no character that ever is just like, well, he's like, I'm not in the show anymore because I retired.
Yep.
Or, hey, I wanted to spend more time with my family, or I got a different job somewhere else. It's just like, they feel the need to like, in order to just preclude that character from ever appearing again, it's just like, well, we got to kill him.
Yep.
Death all the time.
They're on their like retirement fishing boat and then it explodes.
Yeah, exactly.
Say,
Which is why I particularly like what they did with Uncharted. The idea that like, because like gaming does this a lot too, like the big dramatic death moments and stuff. And I like the fact that like, no, there's a way out for characters that isn't just like, getting killed for dramatic effect.
And it's a more understated ending too. And I think Naughty Dog has proven themselves good at that with The Last of Us as well, where it's like you don't have to go to the extreme. People rarely go to the extreme in real life, and you find these kind of middle grounds or compromises or whatever.
Well, Caleb wrote in and said he's disappointed that no one died, and he wanted the ending to be emotional, and his reference was The Last of Us.
I think it was plenty emotional.
Yeah, I thought it was emotional in a good way, like upbeat and happy, which I like from the series. And like, I really loved Last of Us's ending. And so I was kind of maybe expecting something a little bit darker, but I'm actually glad I think Joe said this, they went the other direction and kind of kept it upbeat because that's what this franchise has always been.
I was a little bit disappointed, or is this kind of like a sitting back, like, okay, that seems like a fine ending, when it was just them buying the company and basically the sunset moment, which is also how Uncharted 3 felt at the end. It was a very similar structure. And then the epilogue is where I was like, okay, getting to explore one more awesome environment that the Naughty Dog artists apparently just couldn't help themselves after
Yeah.
like one more amazing little moment.
Another messy house.
Yeah, and people love exploring messy houses. I
Love
am
it.
fully on board for that, and that was such a cool house and such a cool scene.
And how much did that house cost, Naughty Dog?
Though I do want to say, little nitpicky thing.
Yeah.
There's no way in that environment, like a beachfront environment, that a PlayStation 1 would remain in working condition.
Oh, if you have to flip it upside down.
You've got the sea air in there. All it's just gonna the insides of that are just gonna oxidize. It's just gonna be awful. There's no, unless they just have a stock of like old PS1s.
Because they're millionaires.
They're millionaires.
I actually came to the same conclusion that Reeves did. That like
that they went
back and got a bunch of treasure.
Oh, you said you saw a picture, Reeves. Is that?
Well, it's just the picture of them standing with the treasure at the end. That
I think that was from like
Gas
Uncharted
lines.
1, though. That was like an earlier
was it?
Yeah.
photo of all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't too
Well,
late. But
I still think it's a reasonable assumption, even without that picture, though.
It would be insane for them to run a salvage operation and that never to have crossed their minds. Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
have all this scuba
and
gear.
that's exactly what I thought too. Like you escape the cave, it caves in or whatever, and it's like, well, he works at a freaking salvage company. Like, you had an entire segment where he went underwater to like pull up, crap from a
That's true.
train
I really hope they
crash
did
that like.
I hope so too.
And then the fact, I guess, to continue re-explaining what Reeves said, but like the fact that they live on this island that is apparently, I assumed it was their island, I guess, was my conclusion that I came to,
I
since
don't know.
they're the
Could
only
be.
ones who live there.
They named the island Sully.
When it first pulls out from the TV, I was like, okay, they're back in their house. But then there was a window right next to it, and it's
Yep.
like, okay, palm trees, like these guys are living it up.
They moved to California.
Private island, yeah.
Yeah, I
So I
mean,
guess that was
it's basically the Harry Potter ending, which I'm on board for. Like, hey, let's just show that they have kids, that life goes on. And
So we're gonna get a play in like 5 years.
yeah, exactly.
I wanted to say like something that Ben said about like, hey, the ending just leaves you upbeat and sort of like and positive on it. For me, I don't know. Like after I finished that game, I went online and I bought the Nathan Drake collection, even though like I played all those games. I don't know that I ever need to play them again, but like something about like if that series had ended on a downer, on a big death or something, like that would have been affecting. But in a very different way, and like the way it ended now left me with just such a fondness for those characters and for that series that I was like, you know what, I want to like support this. I want to have all of this all in one place.
That's interesting.
It's like I feel like if they had ended on a downer, I maybe wouldn't have had that same sort of I don't know, like desire to like revisit or encompass the whole thing.
What? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, one other. This is kind of a different, related to the ending, but
Yeah.
different. I also really liked when their daughter finds out about the thing, and they kind of joke about they have to have the talk or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But I like the tone of it, where this is clearly something that they had been hiding from her because
Yeah.
they have probably mixed feelings about it, and they probably think it's dangerous and not something that they want to like pass on necessarily.
Well, they bought a cupboard with a lock on it. That takes a lot.
Yeah. But then also you get like, you see from Elena's perspective, like the excitement that Nathan has to kind of pass on these stories now that they think that she's old enough. And I thought that was a really, really interesting kind of exchange. And
Yeah. I like that. Also, after the game, you can play through the game again with like the old Drake skin, just a little bit more gray in the hair. And then
Oh, really?
I like seeing characters
Dad
age that way.
shorts.
Cool.
Well,
dad
the
shorts.
multiverse. Let's go back to the multiverse. Yeah, you're actually.
Can we talk about that last environment a little bit? And actually
house?
just wandering around the house. Yeah, there's like, I don't know if you guys went up to the fridge, but there's a lot of really fun notes that you can read. Can someone turn Joe Juba around, because the look on his face when I
It's just
said
like
that.
okay, it just seems like a weird thing to do a deep dive on. But yeah, let's do it.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was awesome. Like,
How
there's
many-
a little note on the fridge about like Sully trying to quit smoking. You get a letter from Sam and Sully, who should mention are now best buds, inseparable,
Can't get enough of each other.
legally wed.
How many dog biscuits did you give your dog?
I actually didn't do that at all.
You can only do two, I think.
Yeah.
I thought.
And then
I
the
thought I
dog
gave him
explodes?
3, yeah, and then he puked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see
You can eat the puke.
Did you see the Last of Us poster in her room?
What? No.
There's a Last of Us. It's called Last of Us American Daughters. And I don't know
So
if
it's
that's
like a movie or something? Or
it's unclear what it's a poster for, and maybe it's an Easter egg.
does it
and
have
they're
like
gonna-
Joel and Elena on it or what? Or
It's
not
Joel and Elena making love. Yeah.
That's the ultimate crossover.
They're like Mario characters. They're actors.
Right,
So they
that's
can
right,
they can
yeah.
trans-
Yeah.
I know it just has a picture of Ellie, and I forget if there's another lady on it as well. But it'll be interesting to see if that's what they end up naming the Last of Us sequel. Not that it's necessarily that. But there's just a lot of really fun stuff walking around that house. Like you can go and you can get an apple. And then I just happened to walk down the hallway again because I really soaked in that environment. And she'll like take
stole your apple?
That's right. She'll take a bite from the apple and then just like casually toss it in the garbage, just naturally. And it was such a crazy environment. I loved it so much, except for the dog barking, where it was the same sound loop just repeating constantly for me because I was really trying to avoid it. It's like all of these details. Just record like at least 4 different dog barks, please.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I just played through the beginning of Last of Us just a couple of weeks ago
You mean
too.
the best beginning ever?
It is the best beginning ever, and it was just nice to see a very similar setup. Like, hey, where is Dad and Mom in this case too? Mm-hmm. And obviously, tonally, a lot different. It ends a lot better for everybody.
I just saw him this morning.
Yeah.
He made coffee for me.
Yeah, I wonder if they were just like on their whiteboard when they were like, "How are we gonna end this thing? Let's just do the Last of Us thing. We already did the photo and we did the squirt gun fight, so just go
Copy
for it."
paste code, I think is how it works.
Did
over
anybody
there.
else have trouble with Crash Bandicoot jumping over some of those
Yes,
wooden
I did.
posts?
I almost
what
died.
the heck was that?
That was Crash Bandicoot.
Is that how it was in the original game? I don't remember having
it's
that much
tough.
trouble with that.
Yeah, those
Like
games
getting
are tougher.
stuck on it though. Like I would jump and get stuck.
Oh, I guess I didn't
on
get
the
stuck.
post.
I missed the jumps a couple times. I got done to Last Life, and I was like, "Oh, please don't let me botch Crash Bandicoot, one of my favorite games in the recorded version of this for YouTube." Turns out, at the end of the game, they give you stats. I love that they include the stat of how many times you shoot an enemy before he can throw his grenade and blow up. That happened 3 times in my game. And Nathan Drake, for me, killed 568 people.
Hey, just another day.
Just another day. That's what I wanted from that hotel scene, is when Elena finds out he went on this adventure, for her just immediately be like, "Tell me how many more, Nate. Give me the death count.
That's what she's worried about.
We're going to have a daughter someday, damn it."
Murderer.
Also, I think that's where it cut off, is then Nathan Drake went on to explain to the daughter how many people he's murdered.
Killed
also.
so many dudes.
Sometimes you want a treasure, and there are other human beings in your way.
Now,
and
let
you
me-
just have to kill them all.
Let me show you these catacombs where I keep all their femurs.
Yeah.
These are the hands of the people I had to murder for their treasure.
Overall? Oh,
real quick, the dresser that you're going through.
Yeah.
Was there? I had only gone through like half of it, and then I picked up the book, and that kind of triggered the end. Was there anything else interesting in there?
I think there was something from each game.
it was basically the attic.
Yeah,
again,
it seemed like
kinda
it was all the same stuff from the attic.
They
just
pack
like
it up in a
again.
box and
But
brought
like,
it over there.
It's interesting how just even though you as a player are looking at the exact same things, it's interesting how the angle of that changes when you're doing it as a different character. You know, like when you're doing it as Nathan, you're thinking back to like, oh, I remember when I played that game. Like Nathan's sort of a proxy, like your proxy in that situation. And I like that. Like when you're playing through it as a different character, you're not thinking about your exploit. Like you've already thought about your exploit. So when you're doing it, it's interesting to. There's more of
hell
like a
is
sense of
this?
discovery going on with it.
Yeah.
Even though it's the second time, I think that's cool.
Chris from Chicago writes in and says, "Now that we've all finished it, how do you feel about replaying Uncharted 4? I beat 2 a bunch of times, but 4 seems like one of the games that I don't need to revisit. There are fun sections I might play on occasion, but the slow pace in so many of those sections don't feel like they'll hold up for another full playthrough. The early parts of the game were necessary to set up the story and were well done, but is walking around in an attic a fun gameplay experience to lead to experience again? The shooting isn't exceptional compared to the competition. I think I'm done with this game, at least for a couple of years."
I never replay Uncharted.
Yeah, I don't. I was actually, when Joe's talking about the Uncharted collection, I'm tempted to go back and start at 1 again and just play through the whole series again.
Yeah, and I think that's a situation that I would do it in. Is like I like having the whole thing, and someday I will go back and replay the series. But like these games have never been those for me that I feel like I need to go back and play again.
Yeah, good luck replaying Uncharted 1.
Yeah,
You're
no,
gonna have,
doesn't hold
that's
up.
really not great. Not great at all. It's nice that Sony had the confidence, like, let's give them another shot.
Man, well, but back then it scored pretty well, and I don't know, maybe it's just sands of time through an hourglass just
Also,
changes things.
A dumb thing I noticed on the series level, but it like I don't know, kind of a funny thematic thing is that games naming conventions sort of like follow a little pattern where it's the first one is Drake's Fortune, then it's Among Thieves, then it's Drake's Deception, and then it's a thief's end. So you've sort of got the Drake thief sort of
It spells dada
thing going on.
which is a spoiler because he is a daddy.
Oh, there you go.
there you go.
It planned from the beginning. I don't know. Like that's
Yeah.
not a thing. It's just hey,
Hey, not a thing, but hey, I'll say it.
there you go.
And yet you're a monster for looking at the fridge.
Is that a wrap?
The game's really good.
I feel like
Yeah.
we talked about all the major points.
Yeah, someone wrote in talking about how it was their least favorite Uncharted because it was too emotional. And they're like, I don't want to go on an adventure where Nathan Drake, it seems like, doesn't even want to go on it. But I think the emotional beats are what makes this my favorite
I don't
Uncharted
know.
for sure.
Has he played the first one recently?
Well, I don't know. But a lot of really brilliant stuff, which we've covered.
I did want to bring up just to get an opinion from you guys on it. Is that like I know so Reiner and JV on the site did a debate basically that was like, hey, do you need to play the previous Uncharted games to play or enjoy the fourth
Who
one?
was on which side of that?
I think JV was saying that you don't need to, and that Reiner was saying that you should.
I think he's insane. Like, I think you have to play them.
You have to play them.
I really think. I mean, like, if you just, I guess it's tricky because, like, if you just want to play a game that has some gunplay and stuff and some like cool cinematic stuff, yeah, you can play Uncharted 4. But like, more than any other, or like, this is definitely in the top tier of series that like you really need that foundation to appreciate what's going
I
on.
fully appreciate. I think if you're looking just for like a great action game on PS4,
Yeah,
I mean, you can totally dive in and get a lot of the beats. Like, they do a good job of brushing you up, but I would recommend very least watching like the YouTube movie cuts or something.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
I mean, like the viewer said there that like it's part of the reason it's emotional and why that's one of the major takeaways from the game is because it leans so much and assumes so much about the player's previous experience with these
Right.
characters.
Sure,
like,
but
you know?
but every other minute you're also in a shootout or like everything's crashing down around you.
I mean, I feel like
to
there's,
me,
I mean,
it's-
like Hanson said, he only killed like 500 some people. I feel like that's actually way less than in some of the previous.
And if you just want a shooter, like there's other places to go that have better shooting mechanics.
Definitely.
yeah,
just
but
want
not,
shooter,
but not in terms of like nonstop action. I still feel like playing through this game, there were probably a dozen times where I was like, okay, that was super cool. And like, we're all super jaded here, I think. That like, this series has always kind of been like that summer blockbuster kind of thing. And there is a lot more emotion in this one, which I do think you will get a lot more out of if you have played them. But I think if you're just a normal person who wants a fun game, like it's still a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
It's like watching The Force Awakens without going and watching the other Star Wars films. I think you might still have fun and it's a good adventure, but like there's so much built on that.
I think if
Yeah,
you
I
ha-
think
you
that's a
would
good,
really
that's a
need
good
to
analogy.
because I made a point of playing the Uncharted games for the first time actually, like in their entirety before I started Uncharted 4. I'm so glad that I did because I would have had a fine time if I hadn't. But just the amount of like again that opening sequence where you see like all those awesome moments sketched out in the credits, like the amount of joy I felt was like disproportionate for what was on the screen because it's very simple, but at the same time I was just like I felt like I'd earned the right to be there rather than just like jumping in the middle of the most current season of
Sure.
Game of Thrones and
Yeah.
being like, hey, who's that guy? What's that guy
yeah,
saying?
not this, of course it's better, but I'm saying
Yeah.
it's not worth missing out on if you don't want to replay.
I think you're
Uncharted
wrong.
1.
I think it is better to the point where it is worth playing through.
buy
all
the
of them.
Uncharted collection for the same price and play 3 games. I mean, you just played them. Like 2 and 3 still hold up pretty well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
fun
Yeah,
games.
they're great games,
So
yeah.
go play them.
All right, Chris Bartlett also wrote in talking about Reiner specifically, I guess, where in Reiner's review, and I think on this podcast, he says it is the best looking game ever made. Where do you guys stand on that debate?
It's a really good looking game.
It's, I mean, artistically, factoring everything, probably, I still think maybe
It's really good.
just fidelity wise. I'm trying to think of something on PC recently, but Order still stands out
the
to me.
order is really good looking.
I think I might take Order.
I don't know. Like to me, good looking is always so weird because you're not just talking about like graphical quality. You're talking about like art direction and the way like the
That's
way
the
it's all
thing.
presented. So it's like I don't know. I don't like assigning the sort of like, oh, this is the best looking game ever because that always sounds hyperbolic. Even if you believe it to be true, that just like it sounds like you're just going too far.
Joe, yes, and Juba. Great.
But-
All right. Is that a wrap for Uncharted 4 Game Club, everybody? Oh, also, there's a multiplayer mode.
I played a few matches and it is okay.
Do they have at least like trying not to cry faces as like the game over screen from the losing team or anything that would make it?
It's actually like there's a bluffing game where you keep telling an elaborate web of lies and try not to make your significant other weep. Great.
All right, that's it for this game club. We got a ton of great emails. I didn't get to all of them, obviously, but thank you so much. And a sincere thank you to you guys for sticking around and for Jeff Cork joining.
And thanks for hosting, Hanson.
Oh,
and
hey,
coming
my
in
pleasure.
with a notebook of notes.
Hey, and thanks to everyone who's listening and watching.
No, don't think that.
Thanks to Naughty Dog for making this game.
And thank you, Amy Henning.
Thank you, everyone. The next game club, there's a lot of debate about what it's going to be, obviously. So stay tuned. We'll make a shorter gap than between the first two. I'll promise that. And we'll make it multi-platform. I'll promise that, because a lot of people wrote in about that, and I totally get it. Probably not going to be as new of a game as Uncharted 4, but we don't really know what it is yet. But we like the format. We'd love feedback on what you want to see from the future of the format and stuff like that. Throw out game suggestions. We've gotten a lot so far, but there's been a couple that have
Just
struck me out
keep
of the
playing
blue.
games. Maybe you'll get lucky.
Absolutely, and that's
Keep
good.
playing games.
Good life advice in general. All right, guys, thank you so much, and thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next time when we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.